right down one.
Don't want nothing.
Transitioning.
And also that's what I wanna get. The thing that needs something.
Yeah, affirmative. Both sides of Farnham Creek.
Too much things run around in my brain.
And it's
So
splitting
come on,
drainages.
sweetness.
Yeah, copy. I don't even have the map out yet, so I'll tag him with you in a little bit.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the lookout.
I'll go farther down towards the hill.
I got some
Affirmative, thank you. 88 load return.
scanner action going on here, so it might be a little distracting. I'm trying to listen to the scanner and
9 final. 9 final, clear to drop.
talk to y'all too at the same time. Okay, well, what we got going on? We've got a new fire that's going to be a pretty good fire. Bad fire.
You know,
It's not going to be what we'd call a good fire, but it's going to be a real fire. So we're talking about the Coyote Fire. It's burning it's in Eldorado County between Omo Ranch and Lockwood, or kind of between Mount Aukum and Lockwood. So we'll pull that up here. Fire started in the last hour. It's burning in kind of a remote area. So let's just kind of orient ourselves here. All right, yellow dots are structures, and there's a lot of them. So here's Sacramento out here, and up here's Placerville, and over here's Arnold. And then we've got the Caldor Fire on here for reference, and we've got the Mosquito Fire. And the Mosquito Fire is going to be something we want to talk about because this fire's got real eerie kind of similarities to Mosquito. So, Coyote Fire, there's your structures. So it's kind of started on private timberland, or yeah, I think it is on private timberland, and it's kind of in an area that doesn't have a lot of structures right now. But here's Fiddletown, Lockwood, and Fairplay up here. So it's kind of started in this area that in this kind of front country of Eldorado County, we've got a lot of vineyards and oak woodland and kind of your typical California kind of mid-elevation vegetation down low, and then Eldorado County transitions into kind of heavy timber. And this fire is burning kind of up at about 2,500 feet, and the ridges up there are like 3,300, 3,400 feet. So what's going on right now is the fire got started, and pretty quickly it has popped up what we call a big header. And so here's kind of the current view of the fire. So we'll look at the last 15 minutes. And so when you see dark smoke, usually it means the fire's got heavy fuels. Got a different view of it here from kind of from the southwest of the fire. And this one shows a little more of the kind of black smoke action happening here. And this camera also shows that kind of typical foothill mix where you got a lot of gray pine, live oak, and grass. So to the fire itself, fire kind of started, I think, on the south side of Barnum Creek, and quickly spotted onto the north side. And so they've got helicopters that have been working on the area on the south side of the creek. This yellow fill here is Sierra Pacific Industries. They're kind of the biggest timberland owner in the state. And I'll turn that off, or turn it down at least. And so what you've got kind of for fuel type here is you've got heavy timber, and the problem with this particular fire is, listening to the air attack right now, is the fire's well established out in here, and there's really limited ground access to the fire. And so there's, like, as of yet, there's, I don't think there's any engines. If might be wrong, but they've been spending last like hour trying to get access to the fire itself, and in the meantime they've been trying to hold it in check with air tankers. But the air attack is saying, hey, basically this thing's gonna run. It's at the confluence of these different drainages here, and they don't see any good ridges kind of in the near term to box this thing in. So it's likely that the fire, like if we look at kind of the topography here, sorry, you can kind of see what they're talking about. Just that the fire's getting well established kind of in this crux here of these different drainages. And so right now it sounds like they've kept it on the south they've kind of kept it in check on the south side here, but without ground access and getting people in there pretty soon, it definitely could be established on both sides of the creek. And then it just got these drainages to run up, and the fire this time of the day, it's still fairly early in the day, and so the fire's becoming well established out here, and it's really kind of inaccessible ground, and you just don't see kind of like exactly where they might build a box for this thing for quite a ways out here. So that's kind of the potential is, and the reason I bring up the mosquito fire is if we look at the mosquito fire, which burned I think in 2023, same basic elevation, really similar geography. It started kind of right here at the confluence of the couple different forks of the American River, and then that fire, it became well established quickly in this crux of drainages, and same thing, there wasn't any great kind of terrain opportunities, so that fire ended up being large and burned for a long time. 76,000 acres. Another bad thing about where this fire is at right now is that there's no large fire history in this area. Oftentimes fires run into a previous fire, so it does have the Caldor Fire here, but that's not really helpful for Amador pines and all these other areas. So kind of the areas that are kind of going to be threatened by this fire likely are Volcano, Amador pines, Lockwood, Buckhorn. There's a lot of people who live up here in these neighborhoods, and the fire likely will be fought initially along this ridge, but they don't have a whole lot of time to prep that. So I'm just going to see what this road is called here, if we can see. I don't see a road name on there yet. Oh, there was one. Farnham Ridge Road. So that might be, depending on how soon the fire gets to that might be a place they fight the fire. Otherwise, they're going to be fighting the fire over here off of Fiddletown Road, and right up in Lockwood and right up in Structure Land. So it's early in the day, but the fire's kind of at a point right now where aircraft aren't going to be able to hold it in check well enough. It's spotting. It's being spread by spotting. Aircraft, it's exceeded kind of the initial attack. So right off the bat, you look and you say, like, well, likely it's going to burn out to Omo Ranch and out to Lockwood. And when we look at other fires like the Caldor, those fires show you the potential in similar fuel types. We're not quite and it is quite about a drought as 2021 when we had the Caldor Fire, but this is one to watch. And it's only 4 o'clock, so we've got like at least 3 hours of active burning ahead of us today. And as Wildfire 371 is pointing out in the comments here, if you look at our weather, this is peak fire season. It just finally has happened. It's been a slow year, but now we're into this, like, for this is Omo Ranch, or this is Omo Ranch area weather forecast. We're supposed to be in this kind of around 90 degrees through Saturday, with the minimum RH is below 25, which is critical kind of fire weather conditions, and overnight humidity recovery of only 30%. We like to see that get up, around 50 or 60 to really start to slow down fire spread. So that's your kind of initial look at this thing. Let's see what else we can talk about here. As always, any ideas of how it started way out there? No idea. And we don't really talk about ignition causes. We don't speculate here on the lookout. will say that the agencies are really good about figuring that stuff out, and it takes time and it's science, so we don't speculate. But we'll do a little more. We'll look kind of at this area and see what we can find. All right, NorCal storm chasing is on here. Steinberg sent me a text right away. He's like, "Hey, this one's gonna be bad." And for some reason, I was already on it, Steiny. But I'm surprised he's not driving that way yet. All right, so welcome to Lookout. We'll kind of give you a little more. We'll jump out and give you the big picture again. Talking about the Coyote Fire. Yellow is structures. You see Placerville up here, Diamond Springs, Highway 49. Down here we got 49, we got McCalmay Hill, Jackson, Cedar Creek. And then headed up towards Amador Pines, Fiddletown Road, you've got Amador Pines, Volcano, Fiddletown, Fairplay, Oma Ranch. So if this fire is anything like Caldor, which it is already like Caldor because Caldor started right here and ran hard up here through Grizzly Flats, it's predominantly going to want to move upslope. But these fires also move down canyon at night, and they also move down canyon when we get changes in the weather pattern, east wind influence. So I don't have a real good forecast right now, but these areas down here, Fairplay, Mount Aukum, they're at lower risk right now of this fire immediately impacting them than Lockwood, Amador Pines, Buckhorn. But if you're up here in Lockwood, Amador Pines, Buckhorn, Pioneer, Volcano, this would be a really good time to get your stuff packed, because if you're not evacuated yet, you likely will be, and this fire is no joke. So let your friends know that it's a heads up time. We always say, we'll never tell people not to evacuate. If anyone ever asks me, should I evacuate? We'll never say no. We'll never say no, you shouldn't. And we'll never, if someone's telling you should evacuate, and we'll never say no, they don't know what they're talking about. It's just, evacuating is something you want to do early. Anyway, this fire right now is, we'll get a flight pretty soon, I'm sure. But what we like to look at is the width of the base, and that gives you an idea of kind of the energy the fire's got and how far it's spread in an hour. And then it's not usually unreasonable to say that if it's moved from here to here in an hour, in another hour it'll be here. Especially with the kind of strength of this column and the dryness and everything, you've got kind of a fire that's going to be driven largely by spotting at this point. And that's why aircraft, once it escapes initial attack, why aircraft really are of limited utility. It wouldn't matter if you had 10 VLATs on this thing right now. It's gone for now. All right, so let's come back in here and look at some other kind of more detailed info. We've got fire appears to have started on Sierra Pacific Industries land, here kind of at the confluence of Scott Creek and Farnham Creek. This location we're using right now is from National Interagency Fire Center. You got Wessel Oviatt is another large private timber landowner out in there. I'm just listening to the radio here. They're talking about kind of building a box, indirect attack. Just listen to the radio here. I'm just going to turn the scan around here.
The orange flag to gate.
Yeah, firm.
I'm on the gate with the yellow flag in.
Okay, so yeah, for those resources, did you send them out of E-line staging?
Yeah, affirmative. Staging operations.
All right, gotta see if we can see what the airplanes are doing.
10-4-16.
We're still down in Morro Bay as last time we looked at planes. So you got a lot of helicopters working in here.
Copy that.
So I've got a scanner I'm listening to right now. I'll put the link up there for that. I really like the Wildfire Intel forums page.
9/10/1981.
So I'll put the feed up there for this one. If once we get off here, this is a good place to kind of get. It's kind of like watch duty, but the writers are all either current or retired or otherwise knowledgeable about fire. And
was it out of California or Nevada? Do we know? He's stating it's out of Michigan.
there's a scanner link.
Scott Creek and on and Creek towards Round Mountain. That's up ahead with the confluence of Round Mountain.
So what we like looking for on the flight radars, we want to see when that intel plane is going to fly over, because then we get a good perimeter.
Camino Coyote, I see. Do you have still information on my 2 additional tactical frequencies?
Stand by, they've been placed up.
You guys are asking about the Avant-Gardeners song, and it's Commit by the Avant-Gardeners.
Blocking traffic support.
And I have no idea where you would find an album of the Avant-Gardeners, because they don't play together that much anymore, I don't think. But Plymouth County Band
Bridgeport School Road.
played a lot of weddings. Self-proclaimed darlings of the mysterious backwoods
Creek.
Plymouth County funk scene.
Creek,
So I think what they call
headed
themselves.
for Round Mountain. Central 10 out, just for this time.
10 Adam, your radio is dropping.
All right, so just kind of looking at projections of fire spread. Like we said, just like Caldor and Mosquito, the fire is going to want to move up slope through these canyons.
Up the head, I can't identify where they're at. There's a shaded fuel break on what would be the right creek, the right side of on the right flank at the head. And looks like there's a fuel break there if you're familiar with it.
There's some thinning along this ridge that's happened in the past. They're talking about shaded fuel break on their radio right now.
5236 en route to the Coyote incident.
One of the problems in this particular landscape is that we've got a lot of young stands, a lot of kind of
Up on the spot,
plantations of little baby trees. And these things burn like the sun. They just really do. Like, they're dense. They're, the foresters have seen their job as being to pack as many trees on the landscape as possible, while still having them all stay kind of healthy and but they've been kind of trying to optimize this this equation of like growth and yield and time to harvest and everything else, and that has created, like, fire for years and years wasn't part of that calculus. And so when you look at the fuel that's available to this fire getting out into it, like, basically these plantations on a hot day like today with an upcanyon wind, they burn like Southern California chaparral. They're basically like a brush model, and you just got a whole landscape here kind of full of either young stands or stands that have been logged for the last 150 years. And these stands are not at all fire resilient, right? And so we see that on days like today, where they're also really receptive to embers. And especially the clear cuts, once they at first they spray them and they're just kind of like this moonscape of dirt and little baby trees, but then after a while they kind of fill in with grass and ferns. And so they can be a good place to get retardant on the ground and try to stop a fire. But when fires are being driven by long-range spotting, the fine fuels in the clear cuts, it's kind of just like a meadow, and it burns like a grassland. Is this a suspicious ignition? I got no idea. Yeah, you're always curious, like, who's out here, who's doing what, why are they out there? It looks like it's pretty much the middle of nowhere. Oftentimes, though, it's just like something silly. It's like someone out there on a dirt bike without a spark arrestor, or someone, you know, just people start fires. Usually unintentionally. But it's not a good place to have a start, you know. And I made a comment earlier on the social media. It's like we've got unlimited kind of camera views of this fire. You look at the kind of the map of camera coverage, and we spent a huge amount of energy on and money on building these networks of webcams over the last 5 years. But they don't really, they don't really help you put out a fire. They help you see a fire, and they help you put out fires that we're going to, get put out. Anyway, like, early detection isn't kind of the holy grail of fire safety. Just because on the days like today when a fire starts, here where this fire started, it doesn't matter if you knew about it like 10 minutes before the fire started and already had tankers in the air. Because the topography, the access, the fuels, the weather, they all come together, and we're stuck with these fires. We're stuck with these fires that are like the burn under that 3% of worst conditions. And so all this work we do on prevention, all this money we spend on bigger air tankers, more cameras, everything else, it doesn't help us to deal with this. Like you could spend $1 billion and you're going to go from like picking up 95% of the fires to picking up like 95.5% of the fires. But you're still going to have that 2-3 percentile that is kind of impossible to deal with. And so a lot of these kind of technical solutions we have, like, they're great now that the fire's gone. They're great for us to have like 30 different views, and later like to study this, but like once you see that big black column, like, there's no camera that's going to like put that fire out. There's no kind of robot. There's no kind of AI powered space detection system. Like, it's just, this is a hurricane at this point, right? Like, we don't try to stop hurricanes. We don't try to stop tornadoes. Think of this fire as being kind of a tornado that's going to now slowly churn across this forest until it runs out of fuel or the weather changes. So, big, black, ominous. What can we expect? So, what can we expect? We can expect that the fire is going to burn actively through the night. Because of that low overnight humidity recovery of 30%, we can expect that the winds, the upslope winds, will kind of abate as the evening comes on, and the fire behavior will subdue itself a bit as the sun goes down. But as long as the fire's kind of got ample fuel and topography upslope of it, it'll continue to burn steadily through the night. Unclear if I'd say it's unlikely that they're going to be able to build a box for this thing in the initial set of ridge lines that are available to it. So if we look at, let's just start doing a little drawing here. If we look at where the fire is and we look at kind of our initial ridge lines, that would be an 8,000 acre fire. They're not going to hold it in that because they've got nowhere in here to box in the fire. They're not going to hold it across this kind of this road system here, which is barely, it's just a logging road. It's not like a highway or anything. So what's our next kind of box here then? I'm thinking that this would be a first stab at the box they're gonna work. Let's see.
This time we'll do it 8 minutes. Amateur brakes clear.
That's closer to 30,000 acres, but that's tough. That's not a slam dunk, but sorry, and then I deleted it. But I would say, you know, definitely they're going to be fighting it right up here against Lockwood unless they, you know, unless something kind of miraculous happens. Right now, the fire's kind of burning up this way. And so they might be able to hold it on this first ridge, but I wouldn't bank on it. We'll know better, you know, we'll have a little better idea of where exactly the fire is spread to, whence, once we get some mapping on it. Let's see if I can get rid of this thing here I drew now. All right. Yeah, okay, so the Caldor Fire, if it does get that far, the Caldor Fire scar will help slow it down. Like, it's pretty unlikely, I would think, that this fire is going to, like, reburn Grizzly Flats or get over to Pollock Pines, just because fuels have been reduced by this fire, especially in the kind of, you know, the fire isn't going to really help in these areas that are grass and brush down here, but in these areas that are kind of north-facing, where you've got, like, surviving oaks and other kind of forest type, that there's a lot of fuel that's been reduced in that fire scar. It's a 4-year-old fire scar, but that does provide an advantage to trying to keep the fire from kind of burning over towards Grizzly Flats.
4,500, air tech 5,500, helicopter 3,500 below houses.
Cleared in 4,500, Sinker 88, number 2.
Number 3. Fire's turning right downwind, and just to let you know, if we do that, it'll
Someone said that years of thinning along 88 is going to be helpful.
some pockets of burnout. Won't be super direct right through that ravine.
Okay, I copy that. And your third maneuver covers level 6, full load, and exit 4,000.
Or we're right base.
The right base.
All right, let's check out the air show.
Be 1097 and 106 at the Mount Aukum.
All right, so here we got the kind of the spotter plane flying, and then we've got Cal Fire plane here, one of these S2 tankers. So this is helpful for seeing like where they're dropping. You can kind of like see they came and did some loops, and they usually like they probably dropped along this axis, and then they turn and climb out of there.
We'll put as much as we can in this area. I'm definitely going to need a dozer to blow up some of these areas that put vehicles. And then we'll start up the left and right flank from our location, and then we're going to have to come up with a plan for out in front of it.
That copy, Steve. We're looking at the big picture as well. Omo Ranch, there's a couple of roads, SPI roads that come off that side. It's probably going to be our biggest road system from the north end.
All right, so they're talking about SPI roads that come in from Omo Ranch, which are these ones here,
This is our attack air to ground.
and about that kind of initial ridge out through here. So I got a buddy who's a Cal Fire dozer operator, and he said the problem with pushing in a lot of these clear cuts is that you know, once you've got some grass growing in there, is that you just you keep banging it into stumps.
8889, got you arriving at scene, and we're continuing the same plan. We're working left flank from heel to the head, starting at the heel. There's a gap there in the ravine. I'll have you guys close that.
Okay, let me take a look at that.
So what they're talking about right now is that they're talking about trying to work their way up the flanks of the fire. So the fire's kind of burning up the slope here, trying to work the flanks, but they're acknowledging on the radio that they don't have a way right now to get at the head, which is kind of moved into this kind of heavier timber, more difficult country. Let's look at our cameras again. Okay, so this is a view from
Just
From the
anchored and
east.
flanking now from the heel with the big swing, and then the copters are checking up the head as best they can.
Operations 319.
Then I'll clear you guys to maneuver. Here, number 1.
Trainee number 1.
And do you have the drop? We're going to close the gap in the retardant left heel across that little drainage.
Right.
Affirmative, yeah. It started in the drainage, and then the left heel has retardant, and there's a gap in the retardant when we close that.
Command 2.
Access 313, Command.
Oh, sorry, I jumped you to another page here. All right, well, I'm just kind of trying to gather some intel while we're on here. It's kind of a new thing for us just to kind of do a live stream
5111 available. 114.
while we're trying to also gather intel. So there will be some kind of awkward pauses while we listen to the radio, and listening to the radio, you'll get some of the same intel we're getting. Let's see what Watch Duty has to say about evacuations. We love our Watch Duty. Thanks, Watch Duty. It's great service. We like to kind of fill in the details. We like that they are on every fire. They've got some really good kind of radio traffic updates. And then we like to kind of fill in the gaps with kind of the forestry stuff, and in here in Watch Duty you can see all the different helicopters and everything working. Saying the fire's approximately 60 acres 15 minutes ago. Here comes the intel plane. That's what I like to see. So that means we'll probably get a perimeter here in the next 10-15 minutes. We get the same feed that Watch Duty uses for their map. Which is a public feed if you know where to look. If you're a mapping person, you can Google FireIS mapping, and if you're techie enough, you can figure out how to make ESLAT. But Cal Fire's got a couple different intel planes that they fly, like this one, which is Cal Fire's specific, and they've got some pretty advanced wizardry, we call it, like they've got some really nice sensors on these things, military technology, and they record live video, and sometimes they'll send the live video down to people on the ground. But they also upload a perimeter, and pretty soon after they upload the perimeter to the servers, then we can access it, and so can anyone who's got access to that feed, and that's what you see on the Watch Duty map then. So so if I'm in a hurry, I just get on Watch Duty and see what the feed is, because it takes me a little bit of time to kind of ingest it sometimes.
With 86 and 80, 12 miles from the west, calling.
Resource request has been made for 20 engines, 8 hand crews, 6 dozers, 8 water tenders, and additional overhead.
No known hazards.
3005, 4500, take green 5, number 1. Request right traffic.
Traffic approved.
9, follow for tag and extend right traffic.
89, tag and extend.
All right, let's talk a little more about forestry here. We're just going to turn on kind of fire history. All right, so you can see there's a fire here in... we were talking about seeing lots of even age stands or young trees. There's this 1992 burn out here ahead of this fire. So 33-year-old, and you can see when I was talking about like how there was a ton of even age stands out here. That's because this area burned in 1992, and so they replanted it all. So now you got a bunch of 30-year-old trees that are really thick, and they've thinned this, I'm sure, looking at the spacing, probably 15 or more years ago, 15 or 20 years ago.
Division 1, Kino copies.
But they probably planted pine here, and the pine needles are really good fuel for rapid fire spread on the surface. And then you've kind of got this transition from, in these canyons you've got like scrub oak, And so oftentimes you get that combination of the oak and the pine create this real, what we call needle cast brush. And that's kind of one of the more volatile fuel types in the Sierra Nevada is bushes that are full of pine needles. So like if you pull up your Google and Google needle cast brush.
9, turning final.
And every final third drop.
Wildfire. Well, I guess I need to put up some pictures of it because Google doesn't know what needle cast brush is. But it's the worst. It's the kind of the worst fuel type in the Sierra Nevada is when you got a bunch of brush pine needles in it. So back to our speculation about the box.
8-8, 8-9, both good starts, good line, load and return, Columbia.
A lot of that will become clear in the next couple of hours.
Hey, we're sending in multiple resources. There's a large lot on Farnham Ridge that we got permission and access to use as staging area from this side. Chief 2702 is going to bird dog it, get everybody in, and then we'll establish a staging area, and that'll be coyote staging.
Copy, Coyote staging. Do you have a staging area manager?
We're working on it.
Okay, I've got 5221, which is a type 1. I'll send them that way.
Perfect. They will tie in with Chief 2702, and they will assume coyote staging once he ties in.
All right. So people are talking about VLATs. Like VLATs aren't really going to stop this fire at this point. You know, when we look at the VLATs are really effective on initial attack, but once the fire is kind of driven by long range spotting, like you could have 10 VLATs right now, and they're not going to stop the forward spread of the head of the fire. They might slow it down. But right now, there's no ground resources at the head of the fire, and
looking at something off of Elmo Ranch if we can access from the north side.
And poor access. So
yeah, affirmative. And there's a fuel break up there that it's running into. So pull those maps up and see what map that is. Let me get a hold of Dow. He's over at staging, and he'll be able to help you guys access it. I'll send him your way.
All right, so they're talking about some fuel breaks, some thinning work that's been done out ahead of the head of the fire. I don't see anything like super major.
Bravo copies. Go ahead with your traffic. Bravo's off the Coyote incident, heading back to Placerville. We have about 5 minutes en route and for a fuel and return.
Coming over now, there's retarder on the heel. There's a small gap in that second drainage. We want to close that, just a small gap. Close that up and then continue up the left lane.
I think I see the second drainage. It's pretty minimal drainage, but it looks covered in smoke to me right now.
All right, so they're saying that they've got retardant around the heel of the fire, which is down here at the bottom of the gully, and they're working on kind of the left flank of the fire, which would be going up the hill this way.
Of the retardant furthest up the left flank, we're trying to tag and extend off of that.
Saying that they're trying to tag and extend. So tag and extend basically means that you've got your, I don't know what happened.
You have the drop.
6 number 2 has drop.
Dang.
Drop. Okay, 8-5, cleared to maneuver, coverage level 6, full load, copters are holding out.
Gotta figure out what's
Coverage
going
level
on
6,
there.
we're going to try going left traffic and we'll drop uphill on this one.
Yeah, copy that.
8-5's turn to base.
All right, so they're just talking about tag and extend. So say you've got a tanker and it comes in, it puts down a line of retardant here. Tag and extend is kind of what it sounds like. You come in and the next retardant drop is going to hit the last one and extend it. And that's just the way that they work together to build continuous line of retardant.
1291, 1291 Cornerstone across the Aspen Meadows.
And as we're saying here, the problem is that they can't really get in, like, if the head of the fire is up here, they can't really get in under the smoke. But even if they could, you know, oftentimes the fire is like spotting out here. So you could come and put a retardant line here, but then the fire is like throwing spots out here. and then those become part of the new head of the fire. So we're not seeing any perimeter yet.
I'll roll it till I stop getting burn out.
So that's exactly what I wanted, just load and return McClellan.
Alright, so it looks like the guy who just dropped, it looks like he's dropping, like, this is like the left flank here. And his next plane is going to follow on it.
Blaster right out of IO.
So you got 3 S2s in a row here that are all kind of working to paint that left flank. So S2s are kind of the workhorses of Cal Fire. They're the small kind of old plane. I think they were built originally in the 50s maybe as like a, I don't even know what they were. Aviation buffs can follow up on that, but basically what Cal Fire's done is they got a hold of these old kind of Army surplus S2s, and then they repowered them with modern turbine engines, and they're amazing little kind of highly mobile, quick turnaround. They don't carry that much retardant, but for a lot of the fuel types in California, they're kind of ideal. I don't know if it's still the case, but I'm pretty sure that the program is run by like DynCorp, I think. Like I think Cal Fire's aviation program for a long time was run by DynCorp, defense contractor. So DynCorp, I don't know if that's changed, but they used to take care of all the maintenance. They provide the pilots, and they provide like logistics of maintaining the fleet. There's probably someone on here who knows more about that, but it's one of the kind of main. You hear someone saying S2s were submarine hunters, 1954. All right, so let's look at the windy app here. This is our basic area, and it's showing the winds right now coming out of the kind of just a little north of west, and saying that the winds right now are like 7 with gusts to 8. And they're going to continue, they're going to kind of peak at about 11 miles an hour up canyon at 8 p.m.
On the left flank, we'll have Division Alpha. I don't have an engine yet. Division X-Ray on the right flank with 2754.
Tanker 833005 cleared in 4,500, number 1. Air tax 5,500. Multiple copters 3,500 below, and hazards are terrain.
All right, so there's
4,500.
there's an old mill site here where it started. Looks like that's interesting. Like these are some older topos, and so you kind of got a flat there, and it kind of looked like on the imagery it looked like there's kind of like a meadow there. So it looks like this used to be a sawmill. This is what we call LiDAR. So look at maybe this was like an old mill pond here. Yeah, it's like an old mill pond. You can see the berm from an old mill pond. So what's cool about this LiDAR is you can really see like the roads. And this is also useful for figuring out like where to put, like in an area that's got thick brush, often the LiDAR shows you where you've got old dozer lines or, you know, ridge top. So I've used this stuff before, like planning burns. or helping buddies who are on fires to find old, like, logging roads and dozer lines. You see, you got all these roads all over this landscape, but the problem with using these roads for firefighting is that, the winds are blowing from the west, is that they're not really in good places for controlling the fire, right? We like controlling fires on ridges where we can, back up things with aircraft, and we can run dozers, and the nature of this topography here just doesn't lend itself to building a ridge top box around this fire. Like, a fire that's deeply established in its topography like this is almost impossible to fight direct unless the weather's cooperating, and the weather's not going to cooperate for the next 4 or 5 days. So that's why there's a lot of discussion about what's full suppression, what's not full suppression. A lot of argument about these words, but oftentimes we end up being forced to go with indirect attack, meaning we back off and we prep lines and we do firing operations, just because the topography really constrains our options for safely getting in there and going direct on the head of the fire. We're really pretty good at picking up the heel of the fire, but I was listening to low radio traffic. They're talking about the fire's making its way up around mountain.
It's going to be Scott at the confluence. And then
So this is Round Mountain here.
making its way up around mountain.
So we got a fire. We got to start a folder here.
The 500 number C behind 83 or tech 5,500.
Right.
Multiple copters 3,500 below hazards or terrain.
All right.
Undertaker number 2. Grade 3, I got you at scene. We're working on the left flank and we're just tagging and extending from the heel to the head.
All right. So basically, the fire started down here and it's starting to burn up onto this Round Mountain, and that's where we're talking about, where we've got all this area that burned in '92 with the heavy fuels.
CDF TAC 13 and
And so we're talking about kind of a box that they're gonna try to build.
Coyote, I think.
So, what we talk about a lot on here is kind of real basic fire behavior calculations. And so if you measure, that distance, 1.3 miles,
Damn right.
and you say the fire's been burning for an hour and a half, it means it's usually a pretty safe bet that the fire, if all things kind of stay the same with the wind and everything else, that an hour and a half from now, the fire might be out there. And so what we know about kind of indirect attack is that you have to prep your box. You have to kind of have time to build a fire line. And ideally, you have to have time to light a firing operation off of it.
You want right traffic?
And so the problem with all that is these guys don't have time to get that box built before the fire gets there. Let's just change their little icon here.
Copy 10.10.6.
All right.
Right traffic. Break A2, A3 will be in a right traffic. You got it.
Winds blowing west. All right. So when are we gonna get perimeter, folks? That's what we're always hoping for here, is that they're gonna. And sometimes that intel plane, the feed doesn't work. Sometimes their internet's broken, and they got to try to figure it out while they're flying. So there's a lot of weak links. Intel's only as good as the weakest link, and these technologies are amazing, but sometimes they don't have internet, or their air cell isn't working, or their Starlink is down, or whatever else. So that's one of the problems of getting more and more reliant on technology. And what I would say is that I've always talked about with my friends who do ops is the ops chief doesn't need infrared to know that the fire crossed the road, because the ops is standing on the road, and so oftentimes that's about as real-time intel as you get, is being out there and watching it happen. These tools are amazing for situational awareness, the cams and the The infrared and everything else is amazing, but it's like we said, there's days when it doesn't change the outcome. And we talked about also just watching how this thing's going to get wider and wider, and you see that happening. You're just watching it extend. The wider it gets, kind of the more potential, more heat you've got, more uplift. If we look at kind of those wider angle views from farther away. And that just, the more power the fire has then to loft embers farther. So what happens during times like this is that the air tech, and you can hear it happening now on the radio, is the air tech becomes focused on doing what they can with what they've got. And so they know they're not going to stop the head of the fire, but they're like, hey, if we can tie in this left flank, which is kind of out here. Let's say that the left flank is kind of out in here. They're like, hey, if we can slow this down on this flank, then potentially crews are going to be able to get in here. The wind is blowing this way. Potentially, if you can keep this cool, potentially we can get crews in here tonight, and we can tie up this side of the fire, and potentially, protect all these folks out here. And so you just have to kind of make the most of what opportunities the fire presents you, and that's what a powerful air show is best for when things are really bad, is picking up the margins, picking up the parts of the fire that are willing to be picked up. I don't filter on flight radar by a group of planes or the fire squawk code.
Are going to be headed there. And you're going to be Coyote staging, so head there with all the resources you have.
Where's the Cedar Mill camera, Randy Boucher?
I copy. Head down.
It's logged down. Let's see.
Open area, and I'll be the Coyote staging.
Yeah, affirmative. There's a big open area apparently, and that's where IC is sending his equipment to that area.
Let's go. Here we go. Cedar Mill, says Randy. Whoa. Yikes. Alright, we're going to watch this thing from the get-go. Okay, so 3 o'clock. See some smoke out there on the horizon. So we're looking here from the kind of southeast.
Coyote, I see. Camino Coyote, I see. The staging location has changed. It'll be off of Farnham Ridge, just up from Bridgeport School. Well delineated. Have all incoming resources report to staging on Farnham Ridge,
Cedar
just
Mill.
up from Bridgeport School Road.
Alright, Steve says if you add a filter for 1255 squawk. Alright, thank you. Helpful. 1255 squawk.
All units en route to the vegetation fire. Farnham Ridge Road. Report to staging.
Okay, I'm going to do a little geekery here to try to find a Cedar Mill camera.
Bridgeport School Road. Community repeating, all incoming units responding to the vegetation fire. Report to staging location.
There we go, Cedar Mill, okay.
Road, just up from Bridgeport School Road, 1649.
So I'm going to do a little trick here with CalTopo. CalTopo is a really nice app. Map-based mapping software. There's a free version, and then there's also a paid version. I got the paid version, and so I'm going to load up here. I just made a place marker. I got a map of all the webcams, which you can find if you're geeky enough. I don't remember where I got it, but here I got my Cedar Mill camera now into this map here in CalTopo. What's really cool in CalTopo is you can come in here and you can add a bearing line. So we're gonna put a bearing line here of 335 degrees because I just saw that on the webcam. I'm gonna go out 15 miles, and we'll call this Cedar. And so this is kind of a modern version of old school fire lookout stuff. And so that's basically what I did here is I looked at this Cedar Mill camera, and down here in the bottom, it says there's this little coordinate, and it tells you where your pointer is. And so my pointer here is at 335. And so I dropped that on my map, and it said the fire's going up on the Round Mountain. So this shows basically from the origin how far the fire's moved to the east. So how do we measure on here? Can't remember. Let's see. Export. So we'll export this line back into Google Earth. So back in the day, I used to go into the Cal Fire station to buy, like firewood permits, or I can't remember. I guess when I worked for the Forest Service, they had a big forest map on the wall, and they had all the fire lookouts, and then each one of the fire lookouts had a string hanging off of it, and they had a little compass rose sticker around the edge of that, around the center of each fire lookout. And so what you do is, if this was, here's Dyer Mountain here, and here's Peg Leg Lookout up here, and so you'd have a little compass rose, and so if there was a fire out here, the lookout would be like, oh, looks like the fire's out there at about 300 degrees, and then Dyer would say, oh, it's like, at 40, it's at 350 degrees for me, and in dispatch you'd pull those two strings, you'd have a little compass around each one, a little sticker. And that's how we got our lat long. Say, oh, it's in section 25, whatever. So it's basically what I do now with these webcams is you can triangulate using the same basic tools. Just now there's not someone up there in the lookout calling it out, which is too bad, because fire lookouts are kind of universally like fun or interesting to talk to, I think, in person, and you can't talk to the robot. So I know it's antiquated. I know it's kind of anachronism now that we got robots to do all this for us, but there is something lost in that transition. Anyway, so from our origin to this progression here, we're looking at fire spread about a mile in the last 2 hours, and that's with some help from the topography, but it hasn't. Let me clear this out here. What I'd say is that the fire hasn't been topographically favored to move that direction necessarily. It's like, yeah, it's kind of got a canyon with it, but like I wouldn't expect that if the fire gets established over in here, I wouldn't expect it to go a mile an hour over here. I'd expect it to go 2 or 3 miles an hour, because it's more in alignment. So here the fire's kind of fighting like between the wind direction and the topography. It's a little crookedy through there, but when fires like this do get in alignment, you see monster runs. And so I'll have to fire up some of my stuff from Mosquito, because for that we reconstructed parts of the King Fire. Sorry I didn't have my map open for you there a minute ago. I was just looking at the topography here before and talking about alignment and how the fire is kind of, it's making its way up the canyon, but it's kind of not in what we'd call kind of classic big picture alignment. It's kind of tucked out in there. I'm just saying that, say the fire gets established in a canyon like this and the wind's blowing right up the canyon, that's when we expect to see really rapid spread. Let's see if we got any perimeters yet.
Operations IC additionally, I don't know if you copied my resource request once I established the ICP. I ordered 4 additional Charlies, 4 additional Golfs, 6 additional Dozers, 8 water tenders, 2 branch directors, and 4 additional divisions.
All
right, so we still don't have a perimeter here.
Coverage. I'm getting partial intel from you.
Yeah, I hear Peter saying, lookouts use the Osborne Firefinder.
We're going to pile in here. We're not going to have room down at the hill, so we need to go find up some roads up on top.
That copy. We'll work on getting someone up to on the ranch side and bird dog from the top side.
All right, so here's the Osborne Firefinder. This is a pretty cool thing. You'd see that up on, if you go to a lookout, right in the middle of the lookout, there would be this this rotating kind of lazy Susan thing that had kind of graticules around the outside and this kind of way of sighting an angle. And so the lookout would point it at the fire and kind of peep sight through here. It's really old. And then you could get kind of between the angle and the direction, you could kind of get a pretty decent idea of where the fire was. And then you'd radio that in. You'd say, all right, the fire's at 270 degrees. Pretty cool kind of history stuff. Peter says is lookout on Banner Mountain for 8 years. Another thing that the lookouts do that's really valuable for us when we're out there is they take weather. And it can be really useful to know what the weather is on top of the nearest mountain, because that difference in elevation from where you're at, if you're at 2,000 feet and the lookout's at 4,000 feet, when there's stable weather, you'd expect like something like 3 degrees of temperature difference per 1,000 feet. And so if you're at 90 degrees at 1,000 feet and the lookout's at 12 degrees cooler 4,000 feet above, you're like, okay, there's a stable atmosphere today. But if you call the lookout and you're like, hey, what's the weather? And you're at they're 4,000 feet above you, and their temperature is higher than you, or it's wildly off that 12 degree normal deviation that you'd expect, that tells you that the atmosphere is really unstable. And why that's important is because an unstable atmosphere makes a fire do this. And so when we have a stable atmosphere, we call the fire kind of, like we say, it kind of caps the fire. It's like a lid on a pot. And then when the atmosphere becomes unstable, then the pot can really boil over. And fires like to breathe. That's why you blow on a campfire to get it going. And when fires are well ventilated and there's an unstable atmosphere, they can breathe. They can chug right along. They have what they need to really run. Prawn says we got a perimeter. All right, let's see if we can pull it up here. There's another feed I've got. Sometimes I have to mess with a little more complicated program. All right, I gotta jump into my mapping software here.
Just the update on acreage 164 from Intel.
424 acres, I think they said.
The only thing I see, like I said, is that there's a little bit of a fuel break that's kind of to the southeast of the fire, just off of Round Mountain and to the north or to the southeast of it, and that's the only thing we have to work with right now. You got the drop?
Too many apps here. So I just made another video that's not related to this at all, but
additionally, your 2 additional tactical frequencies are CDF TAC 13 and CDF TAC 14.
There we go. We got a perimeter, people. When I say 165 acres.
33473.
Captain 333,
Camino, you can show myself en route to the Coyote incident.
Captain 333, 1700.
All right, so basically
North of
this
the
was
dam,
captured half an hour ago.
2 miles to the north.
And we can see it's established on both sides of the creek here. They were talking about how they were containing the side with helicopters. Hard to know, like without ground forces, it's likely going to be established out there.
The last copters are on downwind right now.
You can see a lot of spots out ahead of it here. It's not real long range spots, but it's still just complicated. That's why, you know, like we're saying, tankers are really, it's difficult to stop them. You're not going to stop something like this with tankers without people on the ground, just because that's spotting. So now that the fire's established here half an hour ago, it's going to make a train driven run up Round Mountain. Now it's already in the middle of doing that, as we saw on that camera line through there. And it's going to go over the top of the mountain here. And when it runs this slope, it's going to do it with kind of great enthusiasm up through here, and it's going to spot all over out in here. And so this road system was already kind of not in play just because of the alignment of it. But the fire, you know, within a couple of hours should be kind of pretty well established out in this kind of backside of Round Mountain. Right now they've been kind of trying to bomb this flank of it to control the spread from going this way. But they're, you know, there's limits to kind of how long they can kind of keep doing that without crews on the ground, because, you know, as you see right here, they've kind of got adverse topography. So even though they've kind of maybe held it through here with retardant for now, it's going to burn through that retardant, and it's going to want to go to the top of whatever hill it's on.
Full load, exit 4,000.
All right, so yeah, if you're just joining us, this is the Coyote. We've got Mount Aukum, Fairplay, Omo Ranch, Lockwood, Amador Pines, Buckhorn, and Volcano. We'll turn on the structures here just to give you an idea of where people live and where the real threats are. All right, so a ton of people living here along kind of Fiddletown Road, Lockwood, Shake Ridge Road. And so the fire is going to, you know, is getting well established out in here, and will likely be fought kind of within this box formed by Fiddletown, Shake Ridge Road, Highway 88, Omo Ranch Road.
17 medic
It's as of yet, you know, the wind direction is moving the fire this way. It's not clear yet whether or not they'll be able to hold it on this ridge. That'll obviously be their primary kind of attempt, and we'll see. They'll get a lot of work done tonight. They got a ton of resources coming in, a ton of dosers. It's close to a lot of resources, and so we should know, you know, by tonight, kind of the status of their efforts to hold it on this first ridge. But as we said, by looking at the weather, that the conditions are not great overnight, with the humidity recovery being poor for the fire to really behave itself. In the yellow here is Sierra Pacific Industries land, and this is kind of an old map, so the fire did start, looks like, on Sierra Pacific Industries down here in the bottom of the creek. And we'll jump back to the web cameras. This is Northern California, east of Sacramento. All right, thanks for everyone. Thanks for all the love, everyone. Quick commercial break. We just put a video up today. If you're not running for your life or terrified of this fire, we interviewed an architect about what's going on in Berkeley with their Zone 0 regulations. And sorry, I just got to turn off this scanner music for a minute. So check out the Lookout. If you just joined us for the first time, check out our website. It's a fire education website and channel, and we talk about things like landscaping and how getting your landscaping right and taking care of stuff around your house can save your house. And as part of that, we're doing interviews with people who know a lot about this stuff. And we also have a new video series that is in the process of rolling out. That's all about Southern California. And we went down to SoCal with some of our favorite fire expert pros, basically, and we made a movie. And so we're rolling out episode 4 or 5 tomorrow. So Danger in Plain Sight. Check it out on the Lookout on the YouTube channel, but you can find it through thelookout.org. This is our website. So if you like our stuff, get on there, become a subscriber, subscribe to our mailing list, all that good stuff. All right. Someone wants to talk about the characteristics of the wind going across these ridges. All right. So I'll pull back up our topography here. All right. So in the big picture here, where are we? We're in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Let's turn off some of this clutter. So you've got the valley out here, Sacramento Valley, San Joaquin Valley. You got the Delta over here, where you got some weird. Oh, they got some mapping of the ocean floor off the Delta. And so you come across the valley. You got the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains, and the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. There's big rivers that run every like 10 miles or so, all from Bakersfield all the way up to Chico. You got the American River, you got the McCalmy River, you got the Consumnes. And those rivers have created these giant canyons that run kind of east-west. And every day the tops of the mountains heat up in the summer, and the air rises up off the crest of the Sierra. And when that air rises up, it creates kind of low pressure. And what that does is that moves, it creates a draw. Air rises, it sucks in other air, and so that's why every afternoon you've got winds that run up these canyons, and that right now is what's moving this fire up these canyons, is the afternoon up canyon winds. It's really, really reliable. Oh, sorry, graphics. I've got, believe me, on both monitors I've got a big sticky note that says show the map, and I still forget. Anyway, yeah, you got the Sierra Nevada. Got the mountains. So this area breathes with wind, and so you see fires move upslope here, both because fire likes to go uphill and because I got it up. Fire likes to go uphill, and the winds do that every day. So it's kind of like you can set your clock by it. Like if you're used to living, up here in Grizzly Flats, you're like, oh, it's 2:30 and there's an up canyon breeze that just started every single day in the summer. And then kind of conversely, every evening, around midnight, then the cold air, the mountains cool off, the air sinks, and it pours down the canyons like water. So the fact that the air is going to kind of start sinking down off the mountain at night doesn't mean that the fire won't still go up the canyon. It's possible for the fire to burn uphill into a down canyon wind. The down canyon wind can actually even kind of like accelerate the spread of the fire uphill because it's giving it oxygen. But for now, if we look at our favorite kind of wind site, okay, so I'll answer a couple questions. So how far is it from Omo Ranch? Five miles. But for now, the good news is that the fire is moving with the topography, not straight towards Omo Ranch. So you see that the direction of the fire spread is pretty spread, So let's look at our webcams real quick here. Yikes. So Cedar Mill. Still hasn't moved that far off to the... Well, let's see where we're at. We're closer to 336 now. So if we go back into our direction, I don't know how much difference that's going to make. right. All right, so we got like 1 degree of difference in our compass shot off that, and it's like that's like half a mile maybe. It's spread. It is definitely churning up Round Mountain is what we're seeing. There is like that, half-mile spread in the last 20 minutes is the fire making a slope-driven run up Round Mountain. So as far as distances for the fire, let's do something here real quick. We'll do a kind of what we call a range ring off of the fire. Fire's now right about here, so let's add range ring. And we'll do 1, 2. All right, so this kind of like distance in miles off the fire. And let's export that. Okay, so right now the fire's about 4 miles from Lockwood. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 miles from Oma Ranch, Fair Play. It's 10 miles to the outside of these rings. So let's save some of this stuff. All right. Where are you at, Kit Kat? Kit Kat, where do you live? Sorry, there's a lot of comments here. I can't really catch them all. I'm trying to answer the ones I can. Sutter Creek. You in Sutter Creek, Kit Kat? If you are, you're safe for now. Like the fire is not getting there anytime soon. The fire's mainly going to be moving up the hill, and it's really unlikely that the fire's going to move down to 49 in a big way anytime soon. We don't have any kind of big crazy wind events in that direction or anything forecast. So for folks that can see this from the valley from 49 corridor, for now the fire's moving away from you, and there'll be a lot of time before the fire. We don't at this point. I really don't expect that this fire is gonna like make a big push down to River Pines, Mount Aukum. I think the places that should be worried right now are should be planning on potentially an extended evacuation would be Lockwood, Amador Pines, this Fiddletown, and Shake Mill Road corridor, Shake Ridge Road. Like I would just, if you're in those areas and haven't gotten an evacuation, I would be thinking about evacuating and that you might be away from your house for an extended amount of time. So, be thinking about what you would need if you're going to be away from your house for a week or two. It's not out of the question. We've seen during the mosquito fire and during the Caldor fire that it takes a long time for these things to unfold, and once you get evacuated, odds are decent that you're not going to be allowed back in for a long time. So And like I said, also, we'll have a better idea in the next 12 hours of whether or not, even in the next 4 hours, whether or not they're going to hold it here on this first ridge. Farnham Ridge Road. That's kind of like one of the first spots that they might be able to kind of box it in. We're in California. Will the evacuation reach Pioneer? Where's Pioneer? Pioneer. Might. Probably not today. But I'd be thinking, it's like you're 8 miles from the fire. The fire's mainly moving away from you right now. It's not going to make big runs across these canyons towards Pioneer. But depending on the next few hours, we'll know whether or not, if we start to see widespread evacuations for Fiddletown Road and Lockwood, it means probably that they don't feel comfortable that they're going to be able to hold it here on Farnham Ridge Road. Brian Gustafson said lost all of his friends in his house in Caldor. Yeah, it's tough, man. A buddy, good friend of mine, spent years doing fire safe thinning work, running projects to try to save Grizzly Flats, and it didn't work. So Caldor does kind of describe that potential of what fires can do here under these kind of intense kind of midsummer conditions. All right, back to the cameras. All right, so this is looking from the east. Fire's chugging along. I will say that California firefighting is amazing. Cal Fire and the Forest Service pull off incredible acts of operational whiz-bangery. No other way to describe it. They're really good at what they do, and when a fire like this gets big, it's not because they didn't throw a huge amount of resources at it. It's just kind of like the Butte fire that burned in Amador County. Some fires start in the wrong place, and there's lots of places on the landscape that are the wrong place for a fire on a day like today. And just like the park fire, when we look at the park fire that started here in Chico last year, it started at the end of our hottest 14 days ever recorded. It started under power lines and at the bottom of a slope, and we can't our aircraft can't drop on live conductors. They can't drop on power lines, and so there's just these spots where fires can kind of sneak through. I think this is Round Mountain we're seeing here, and we're seeing the fire kind of flank around it. Let's see, 182 off of Omo Ranch Road. 179 off Omo Ranch Road. I feel like we need some music on here just to kind of fill the gaps. All right. So we're gonna take a shot here off Oma Ranch, kind of try to triangulate our fire a little bit. And what was that shot? The fire's out at 179. All right, so yeah, so it is Round Mountain we're seeing there. So on this camera, we're kind of seeing the fire kind of squirt up on the backside of Round Mountain. So basically the fire's kind of running the canyon here. It's going up this, we're seeing it kind of come around Round Mountain on the backside here on this camera. Right there is Round Mountain. And you can see the fire kind of going around the backside of it. So out in here now. So like we said, it's kind of, you know, it's got the slope here, but it's got the topography too. And it just wants to keep doing that. It wants to keep going up like this, with the kind of winds carrying it. So they won't be able to fight the head, they'll be able to work with the flanks, but they don't have any opportunities, really good kind of direct opportunities out here in this topography for direct line. So that's why we see, you know, going to potentially like falling back to a box like this ridge line system here, pushing a fire line with dozers, potentially lighting a fire, what we call, you know, a firing operation or a backfire off this ridge. Firing's, you know, we talk a lot about firing on this channel, and firing is a really important part of firefighting. You know, potentially this is kind of the box that the landscape presents as an opportunity for control on this flank of the fire. And so potentially you push a whole bunch of that with bulldozers and you start lighting fire off of it. Because if you just push a line and you wait for the fire to come to you, it's going to come to you like when it feels like it, which is usually like middle tomorrow afternoon with an upcanyon wind, and then it's going to spot out in here. So just kind of to keep it on our minds, this is the Caldor Fire scar over here. So in the big picture, like we said, it probably won't burn through the Caldor Fire scar, but so that's why you want to come out here and do a firing operation along your dozer line once you get your dozer line pushed. But that can take days, because you push your dozer line, but there's a lot of dead trees on the landscape, and so say you push a dozer line and you do a firing operation and there's just one dead tree out here, and it falls across your line after everyone, you know, this is a moving show. You do a firing operation and it's not like you're going to have like a fire engine parked every 100 feet for 10 miles. And so after the firing operation has happened, even if you held this line, if you have a snag that you didn't take care of and it falls across the line and you're not there, then the fire's established again on the wrong side of the line. So it takes a long time. Indirect attack is how we control big fires, but indirect attack takes a lot of time to prep lines. You have to have the right weather for the firing operation. You have to have resources to help pick up spot fires when you do your firing. And so that's why you end up seeing, like, you know, yeah, so potentially this is the first good option. But CAL FIRE is really good at contingency, you know, so that might be their primary control line. They're also going to have resources out here that are prepping other road systems, and we call that we call it PACE. You got your primary, so maybe your primary, you got your alternate, which is maybe where you go if your primary doesn't work, and then you've got your contingency. And E, I don't even remember what E stands for, except that things aren't going well when you get to E. So let's say this is kind of maybe primary box contingency. Maybe on this side you've got primary box of Farnham Ridge Road, and contingency is Fiddletown Road and Shake Ridge Road. Obviously, the preferred option is not to work out here where there's all these homes. But we often are, we're on Fire's timeline, we're on Fire's program now. The tough stuff about either of these boxes is like, how do you stitch across this part of the box? You got no major road systems. We really aren't good at or enthusiastic about placing people in canyons upslope of running forest fires when you're in the most critical fire weather of the year. So you start to look at like, well, the box theoretically at that point is all the way out here to Omo Ranch Road and Highway 88, or not 88, but this upper road here. You can see that this area up here, as you get closer to Omo Ranch, has been thinned. But there isn't a continuous road system down this fuel break either. But this fuel break, is Sierra Pacific Industries has been thinking big picture. They've learned a lot from past fires. And so you see a lot. You see on this landscape that you've got fuel breaks basically that have been cut on these ridge lines. They show up as kind of like lighter areas on the imagery, and those can be really, really helpful when you come to trying to box in a big landscape scale fire. But when you look at kind of what you've got to work with between the fire and there, that's a big box. And like I said, with indirect attack, you have to take the opportunities that the landscape presents to you that give you the greatest likelihood of success. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to try to do something sooner. It just means that based on what we know about fire behavior and this time of year and weather and fuels, that oftentimes that keeping the fire smaller in that smaller box isn't going to work. And so there you go. Someone says, is it odd that they're not asking for bigger air tankers? I would say that the air attack people, they are really good at what they do. And if they're not asking for them, they don't think they're going to work. That's just, that's all there is to it. Those people, the air attack people are best. The people that end up being air tactical group supervisors, they're the best. They're the smartest. They have had great mentoring. They see what's going on. They have a feeling for the fire, the scale of the fire, the behavior of the fire, the tempo of the fire that no one else has. And they tend to get what they, right now there's, I guess the big Type 1 tankers are pre-positioned in Southern California for a big critical weather event down there. But they could have them if they wanted them. And so the fact that they don't have them would tell me that they aren't asking for them, and they aren't asking for them because they don't think it's going to materially change the outcome now. Wildfire 371 says SPI's fuel breaks aren't oriented in the most efficient directions for stopping fires. Yeah, well, that's the deal for the entire Sierra Nevada. Is that you end up getting these ridge systems that parallel the rivers, and that's where you can do the big mechanical thinning. These fuel breaks get put in with mechanical logging machines, feller bunchers, and those machines work well up to 30 to 40% slope. You can run them up to 50% slope if you have great operators and the right soils and everything else. But the ridge tops are where you have the opportunities to kind of do this intensive thinning work, and you kind of have to go where those ridges are, and you have to connect the long ridges, and the long ridges are the ones that run east to west. But that's, one reason that you see that the Caldor got so big is just that once it got established here, so something that to watch for on this fire, and I'm not a meteorologist, but, when you look at the progression of Caldor made a hard run to the north on the second day. And then that opened up this wide front, and gravity took over, and the fire then had a much wider front to move up the slope. So let me see if I can pull up Caldor progression map. Got to fire up the old server here. Hey, it's already working. We got a pretty good archive here at the lookout. Gotta say, proud of the amount of material we assembled, and a lot of this is due to your guys' support. Like we, there's a lot of kind of back end stuff that I do that just like managing data. That it's not sexy and it's not really compelling, but you really can't do this work without a library. And so we bring you the library. So, dang, that's an ugly map. Sorry, I apologize for the map. I didn't make it, but I don't want your AI-powered help. Damn you, Adobe. All right, so here's a progression map of the Caldor Fire. And as you can see, the fire started off down here, and it had kind of south winds. And it, pretty immediately, it made this big run, and then the kind of up canyon winds took over. And the next day, so the first day is this purple, second day is this blue, and then the green, and then, man, this is a butt ugly map. Who made this thing? Great Basin team. Jeez, guys. It looks like a play to hurl, to quote Wayne's World. Sorry, it's people. I'm a cartographer. I went to school for cartography, and I can't help myself. I will throw shade on ugly ass maps. Let's see if these guys. Oh, that's much better. See, like we like this because then you can kind of like think like a rainbow and be like, okay, like red is new and blue is old. So you can see that Caldor, like, it blew up to the north here, and then it kind of oozed its way up, and then eventually, like, made it all the way over to the top of the mountain. It's not... let's see. So what's interesting here? Okay, this is interesting. Today is the 20th of August. Caldor started on the 15th. So basically, that just tells you that we got time out ahead of us for this fire to do whatever the heck it wants. Cartography at UC Berkeley, says Angel Share. All right, got like the geographer's gang sign. Geography, baby. All right, so that's Caldor. So, all right, so trying to make these lessons kind of more universal. Give me a second. I gotta do some kind of background geekery here. I'll share my favorite tool here. This is called QGIS, and it's not easy to drive, but it's an amazing program. It's free. So there's a company called Esri right here. That's why I got an anti-Esri. And Esri is like the Microsoft of GIS, except that I don't think that Jack Dangerman ever went to Epstein's Island. He's the owner of Esri. And QGIS is like the free alternate version of ArcGIS. So QGIS forever, people. No defense contractors were benefited from the development of QGIS, I'd say. All right, I was going through. I got to find. I'm putting the Caldor map onto 3D so we can enjoy it in its three-dimensional splendor. But that unfortunately involves like 30 clicks of the mouse. All right, and so for all you aspiring cartographers out there, here's a trick I wish someone would have taught me a while ago, is that you can actually export a geotiff of a PDF map from QGIS. So now we're deep, we're in deep now, but I'm basically making a map here of a map, so I can then open that map in this map and add sexy colors to this. It didn't work. All right. That was worth a try. No, all right. We're just gonna have to work with the 2D version for a little while. We'll have to spend some time on that later. Anyway, Caldor chunked its way up this way. So yeah, so the question is like, oh, so could this, where might this fire make it? It might do whatever the heck it wants. It might go all the way up to the rocks, Bear Valley. Don't rule it out, right? That's what I'm saying, is like this fire started a week after this fire, and there was enough time in the fire season for this fire to go from here to Lake Tahoe before the season was over. So, you know, as we say in the fire business, you know, this fire history shows you the potential built into the landscape, the topography, the fuels, the lack of fire history. And when we look out kind of above this fire at our large fire history, we ain't got much. We got the Power Fire is 20 years old out in here. A 20-year-old burn in the Sierra doesn't do much to stop a new fire. So this fire's, it's got potential. You know, we don't want to get too crazy prescriptive about it, because then we are too invested in what. I hate saying like, oh, it's going to go all the way here, and then like waiting for it to happen. Will I be here all night? No, I won't. I won't be here all night. I can't do it. I'm a one-man show. Got a family. But I'll be here in the morning, and I'll be here a little longer. I got to kind of take a drink here. I'm gonna play some video or something just for a little while, just to kind of. I got to take a minute to kind of reacquaint myself with what's happening and queue up what's next for you guys. I think what I would like to show you, just while we're in this tip though, if you're just joining us, here's a map with lots of stuff on it. I'm sorry, too much stuff. We're looking at the Coyote Fire. The Coyote Fire is burning in the foothills of Eldorado County, east of Sacramento, south of Placerville, north of Highway 88. And the fire started about 3 o'clock, and it's now a couple hundred acres, and it's very well established and exhibiting kind of pretty extreme fire behavior, likely to burn for thousands of acres before it's controlled. And there's a lot of structures that will be threatened potentially if the fire continues to do what it's been doing. So Lockwood, Amador Pines area, Shake Ridge Road, Fiddletown Road, all these areas are potentially going to be threatened by this fire if they're not able to contain it kind of within their first ridge system. Just looking at the webcams, fire is quite active across a large amount of ground in heavy fuels. It's hot weather. Still some time left in the day for the fire to do its thing. So, big bad fire. If you live anywhere within 10 miles of this fire, you should be paying heed, as it is not stopping anytime soon. So we got some kind of rings we're going to bring up here that kind of just show the distance from the fire to things that are of interest to people who live out there. 4 miles to Lockwood, 7 miles to Amador Pines, 4 or 5 miles to Omo Ranch. Right now, we're less worried about Mount Aukum and Fairplay and these other areas, though it is good to be aware that fires can make big runs downslope at night. But right now, the fire is primarily moving upslope away from the Highway 49 corridor. Okay, everyone. Tactical pause. I'm going to play a video. I'm going to play the first episode of our Danger in Plain Sight series, which is on YouTube. And if you like it, highly recommend checking it out for reals on the whole series on the Lookout. But the situation is not hopeless. Some of my most experienced wildland firefighter friends are joining me on a bike tour of LA. We'll traverse the city from Pasadena to Malibu, looking at the vegetation and architecture and studying the landscape from a firefighter's perspective. We'll share insights gained from decades working on large fires. We'll provide practical tips and solutions to empower you and your community. Our goal? Rethinking how to live more safely with wildfires. The risks can be overwhelming, but having a better understanding of fire can make life in these fire-prone places feel a little bit less crazy.
Oh!
My name is Zeke Lunder. I've been running the Lookout website for the last 4 years. Before that, I was working as a geographer on wildfire mapping and wildfire analysis. In my career, I've worked on a lot of big fires that wiped out towns.
Longtime San Diegans remember the devastation as the Cedar Fire raced through our county, killing 15 people and destroying thousands of homes.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lookout. We started Lookout because we felt like fire literacy is an important part of living in a place. This is like the biggest fire in recent memory. If you can understand how fire works in a place, it can allow you to live there without being terrified all the time. My wife said, you know, we really have to start reporting on SoCal issues because people need the information. I'm a NorCal boy from like way out in the middle of nowhere. My high school class had like 25 people in it.
Fear and concern is growing tonight as flames light up the Los Angeles hillsides. Firefighters are scrambling to contain several major fires tonight.
When we reported on the LA fires on our YouTube channel in January, the amount of misinformation in the comments was really off the charts. Did the fires become large because of a lack of water? Would more firefighters have helped? And how can homes burn when nearby trees are still green and standing? I thought it'd be great to get a few of my smartest wildfire friends together and go out and look at the burn sites and also at the city itself. We're hoping to kind of counter some of that misinformation, help people understand how things really work. And so that's what we're doing.
Right. Going to LA.
And you can tell when the streets get all wiggly that the reason that they're like that and not a grid like this is terrain.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in the LA basin, they've built everywhere that they possibly can build.
In the 1950s, the engineers figured out how to build on steep slopes, and then it opened up all this terrain. And so you got this age class of housing stock.
My name is Tim Chavez. I'm recently retired from CAL FIRE after 40 years of service. If I go to a fire this year, this will be my 48th fire season. It'll be interesting to see what is built there.
Like, I feel like once we get over there, however you want to structure the afternoon, I'm open to your, like, how you want to do it, where you want to go.
My name is Denny O'Neill. I'm recently retired from CAL FIRE, 34 years of service. I just recently retired as the Assistant Chief of Wildfire Home Hardening from Cal Fire, Office of the State Fire Marshal.
It would be nice to find a place where you're up above, where you, like even here is kind of a pretty good example.
We're down here because the solutions that work in other places don't necessarily apply in LA, and we want to give people good concrete information about different ways that they can make their places safer from fire. Our largest fires in Southern California are driven by strong offshore winds that come in the fall and winter. These winds sweep in off the desert and are very dry. They often accelerate in speed as they come up and over the mountains and drop into the coast. We have plenty of fires that happen on an everyday basis, but the firefighting infrastructure here is so developed and so advanced that most of these fires don't become large. Just about the only time we have big problem fires in Southern California is when the Santa Ana winds are blowing hard from the east. You know, these communities, the DNA of them is that they're built on these designs that didn't consider wildfire, that didn't consider earthquakes, that didn't really consider sensible land use. And so we're here to look at how to make things safer, but we're also here to talk about how you might radically reimagine what dwelling in these hills should look like. On bikes, you see stuff that you don't see behind the curtain of how a city really works. I'm gonna move some bikes around. Ready?
Ready to go.
Okay. Bikes have been part of my life always. Being on a bike in a place really helps you feel it in a way that you don't get with the windows rolled up, the air conditioning on, the radio playing.
Interesting angle to see the Hollywood sign.
Piece of cake on an electric bike.
I didn't think we were going to go through Griffith Park. We should have looked for where the fatality site was.
There's a monument right next to where we're going.
This is insane. So where's 280 coming from? There's 180.
280.
So the wind on the 7th up here, or down in there, was all coming from 280. So I wonder if it was hitting here.
Circulating?
Yeah.
If the bike falls down that cliff, I'm not going after it.
Many of the fire roads that we're riding on were built by hand during the Depression. It's a reminder that for as long as LA has been here, it has faced brush fires in the hills. And for as long as there have been buildings that need saving, there have been firefighters dying trying to save them. Wildland fire has a rich tradition of storytelling. When bad things happen, we study them, we talk about them, we pass them on as folklore. More than anyone else I know, Tim Chavez has been collecting these stories, studying, using them to teach. Tell me about the fatality.
So the Griffith Park fatalities are significant for a few reasons. Number one, it was kind of before modern firefighting. The workers were all WPA workers, so they didn't have any safety gear, they had no training, they had nothing. And it's still the single day highest loss of lives in wildland firefighting in modern history.
This is like 1930s or something?
33, I believe.
Okay.
And it was October, so it's probably an offshore, but you know, nobody's really sure. There was a small fire that broke out in the park, and all these guys were building roads and trails, so they mustered them all up, and they essentially went downhill right into the face of the fire, and the fire swept over them, and there was 29 right away, and I think 4 died later.
Wow.
Yeah. It was, you know, unemployed men. They built these camps, and they went out and did some conservation projects, built fire roads, built water tanks.
So you think the roads we were riding on today were built by them?
I would bet on it that they were all built by WPA.
That history, you know, that we, in our wildland culture that we talk about, gives clues to the kind of permanence of fire around here, and that fire has always been exceeding people's expectations.
It's really important. I mean, I've personally been trying to remind people of their history. That's one thing when I give a briefing at a fire, one of the things I always look for while the fire is active is there any fatalities around here? And almost always, no matter where you are in California, you can find one that was close by. And very often the conditions are really similar to what happened that day, you know? So yeah, they're everywhere. Unfortunately, as a fire service culture in general, not just Cal Fire, but everywhere, a lot of that is being forgotten.
Yeah.
So it's good to bring it up, point it out, you know, whenever. And lunch is served.
Salsa every meal.
Yeah.
Getting to ride bikes along the LA River and along the Arroyo Seco bike path. Southern California is a completely different ecosystem. So I knew that if we came here and rode bikes, we would get a feel for the place. You ever been here before?
Man, I have not seen this part of LA. We followed the LA River, now we're following the Arroyo Seco like you would if it was primitive times, and water's life, right? Without it, you die. So you have to follow the water.
It's really interesting riding through these different neighborhoods and feeling the vibe shift as you ride from neighborhood to neighborhood, and to see how the freeways have kind of fragmented the city in ways. But you sense these things as you ride through, like, oh, something's changed in the last 10 minutes. You know, as we're rolling into the Eden Fire, looking forward to hearing what Danny has to say about, like, the important things that make the difference between a beautiful home burning down and not burning down. But I'm not looking forward to going out there at all. A lot of people were taken by surprise that the fire moved so far into an urban area outside of what we consider to be the urban wildland interface. I think that tells you in some ways that we aren't very good at defining where the wildland ends and the urban landscape begins. How was it that fire was able to move through a quiet suburban neighborhood in a manner that was similar to how it might just burn through a field of brush?
Couple things that you can see over here. This house had stucco siding, so non-combustible siding, and you can tell that there was firefighter intervention there, but you can see damage to the wooden fascia. The siding probably helped a lot, and the firefighter intervention helped a lot. There's two components that go on. One is structure to structure. If this house catches on fire and that one's also wood, it's probably going to catch on fire. You know, if you can get about 50 feet and you're downwind of that house that's on fire, it stands a pretty good chance. 30 feet and below that, unless your house is super fortified, it can't really take that sort of...
Well, I know in the campfire, that was the most significant single piece of data for them, was whether or not there was another structure that burned within 60 feet of a home.
And that's for structure to structure, but when you look at ember generation, and if you go from like grass to brush to conifers to houses, the grasses will generate embers, but they don't loft as high and they don't go as far. And then you get into brush, they tend to loft higher and then go farther, and then conifers and brush kind of generally in the same range. But when you get to a structure fire, they burn for a long time, and then they generate a lot of embers. And a lot of the components that the house is built from can launch.
So like the
launches in bigger
asphalt shingles.
Yeah, bigger embers. This house over here.
Is that a vent?
I think the top is a vent.
Yeah, it's a vent. It looks like it broke from the inside out. I bet the inside of that house is gutted.
That's what it kind of looks like, yeah. The embers can enter a house through an opening, they can pile up against some sort of combustible component, or they can light something around the house, which we call exposures. Natural vegetation, ornamental vegetation, it can light sheds, fences, you know, cars. Then if that catches on fire, then that becomes an exposure to whatever house that's downwind. And that is really truly where we have the problem, is that if the fire was moving structure to structure everywhere, you know, there's ways to kind of pinch it off. But when you start getting embers launched and you get fires downwind in discretely different areas, that's where the challenge starts to happen.
Residents, evacuate immediately.
For the firefighters, you know, it's super challenging.
Yeah, you got spot fires down here, you got more spot fires up the street.
You barely have the resources to put out a single fire.
Correct.
Whoa.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Tim can attest, but like if this was a single house on fire, normally we'd have between 3 and 5 engines and be flowing, what, 500?
15 people and 500 gallons a minute.
And in this sort of environment where you have all these structure fires in distinctly different areas, firefighters just, they can't keep up.
Right.
And there's no number of firefighters in something like this.
You get into a situation like this, every engine company officer has to make a lot of individual calls, like what they're willing to commit to and what they're not willing to commit to.
The house is still standing, and we're trying to defend it against our neighbors.
Okay.
And there's space around it, but we're having a hard time with buckets. Can you please help?
Yep.
I've driven by houses that had this much of the roof on fire, but I knew that if I committed to that house, then the whole, you know, next row of houses was probably not gonna survive. So those are hard calls to make.
My friend Will Harling says that knowing the fire history of the place that you live in is probably more important than knowing how to read. And I think that he's not really overstating it. I guess we feel like if people become more fire literate, that they'll push for policies that make more sense if they understand the limitations of firefighting. All right, we're back. Thanks everyone for checking that out. That's our Danger in Plain Sight series. So I got a bite to eat. Good to go for a little while. Got some water. All right, so if you're just joining us, this is the Lookout. My name is Zeke Lunder, live in Chico. I'm a wildfire analyst, been working in wildfire for 30 years and got into fire through working for the Forest Service, and then got a geography degree and got into mapping right when we were starting to do kind of mapping in fire camps. So I worked for companies making maps for firefighters for 20 years, and then started Lookout during the campfire and Caldor fires because we felt like there was a real lack of kind of real good kind of tactical level information about what was happening with these fires, and that, you know, there's a lot to talk about with fire and a lot to help people kind of make sense of all of it, and it's confusing and it's scary and there's a lot we know, so we want to kind of tell these stories. So we're covering the Coyote Fire, and every fire's got something interesting about it. This fire, you know, there'll be interesting things for sure, and we want to kind of, we're not Watch Duty. We don't try to cover everything about every fire, but we do try to cover fires that we think are interesting and tell you why we think they're interesting. So this fire is interesting right now because it's August. It's escaped initial attack, and it's kind of doing what fires do when they escape initial attack in the Sierra Nevada, which is cause problems and burn wildly in heavy fuels, because our landscape is full of heavy fuels. That's kind of the curse of that's kind of what we have to deal with as Californians, is that you know, we're really good at putting out fires, 90% of the time, 95% of the time even. But then when the fires do get away in these heavy fuels that we've created through all the different ways that we've kind of messed up over the past couple centuries, we have fires like this that burn out of control and that are really taxing for everyone involved. So let's look at the last 30 minutes here of the Coyote Fire. We're kind of looking at, we've been watching the fire kind of move steadily to the east from where it started. And so, as we said earlier, this is what's called Round Mountain. And we'll jump out and look at kind of the big picture here. All right. And I did figure out how to get the Caldor Fire to show up on here, so we'll jump in there. But let's come in here and see where we're at. Sorry, let me start a little bigger picture here. All right, so we got the Coyote Fire, Sacramento, Placerville, Jackson down here, South Lake Tahoe. So it's burning in the Sierra Nevada mountains, kind of east of Sacramento. All these yellow dots are structures. And then we've got rings here every mile out from the fire. So we've got Amador Pines, Buckhorn, and Lockwood are kind of the closest communities to where the direction the fire is spreading right now. Omo Ranch is to the north here, Fairplay, Mount Aukum. So far we're less worried about the fire getting to these places right away. And we've been looking at the Caldor Fire as an example of how fires work in this landscape. The Caldor Fire started on August 15th, 2021, so 5 days earlier than this fire. And so we're going to look at this fire, and then we'll jump and look at the progression of the Caldor, just to kind of make sense of how fires can behave in this landscape. For now, we'll refresh our perimeters and see if there's any new data from what we had that was flown hour and a half ago. All right, so what we know so far is the Coyote Fire started in the bottom of this canyon here, and it's been moving to the east with the topography in pretty heavy fuels in areas that have kind of been managed for commercial timberland for the last 150 years. As we can kind of see from the cameras right now, the fire is kind of now burned out kind of around Round Mountain here. And so it's spread about 2 miles or a little more in the last 3 hours. It's still 3 miles from Lockwood, the lower parts of Lockwood here on Shake Ridge Road and Fiddletown Road. And we think that the fire is likely going to get pretty large just because they don't have great options for direct attack on this fire. So, let's see if our other kind of intel sources have anything to say about it. Oftentimes, unless we get fresh infrared flights, we're kind of guessing off of the webcams as to where exactly the fire is. So, earlier we were looking at this Cedar Mill camera. This is Fiddletown. Right. Cedar Mill. That's funky. It's nice when they have like one camera that's a little more zoomed in than the other. Alright, so the smoke now is out to like 341, and what we had done before is looked on here, Cedar Mill, and we drew a compass shot off of the direction that we see the smoke on the camera. This is Caltopo. And highly recommend supporting these guys. They provide a great service with their mapping app. You pay them $50 a year and you get access to some really good stuff. All right, let's export that line, see where it's pointing. All right, so it's basically showing that the fire is kind of made its way around Round Mountain here on this kind of south side, which is what I've been thinking was happening. And if we look at, I think what would be good too is to see if we can see where the fire is kind of on an east-west line. So let's look at it from a different camera. Let's look at it from this dewdrop camera. All right, dewdrop. Kind of hard to see exactly what's happening here. Looks like about, let's say 275 on dewdrop. All right, so yeah, so those two crosses kind of put the fire kind of out into about out into here. So so we're just going to kind of say that we think the fire is kind of somewhere around there right now. And at 341, how far is it spread? Spread about 2 miles in 3 hours. Catherine's World says that there's salvage from Caldor that's a protective area of the Pioneer area, and that's not true. Because Pioneer's over here. And Caldor's over here. So Catherine, unless you got like solid maps and stuff you're looking at, please don't share stuff like that in the comments. Because that doesn't make any sense. All right, but regarding Caldor and kind of the potential here, let's just jump in here and look at the Caldor fire progression, right? So, told you I'd get it for you in 3D, and here you go. So, fire started down here. The Caldor fire started in a canyon here. It got blasted north with kind of a rarish south wind. Burned up Grizzly Flats kind of pretty early on. And then the topography took over, and over the course of the next couple weeks, the fire spread all the way to Tahoe. What you can see here that's interesting is that this green was a downslope run that the fire made on like day 4, maybe 4 or 5, where the fire ran down towards Pleasant Valley and Fairplay. So that's not unheard of in this country. For we expect kind of robust down canyon fire spread at night. And so it's not out of the question that the fire will grow substantially down canyon overnight, but probably not, gonna threaten like Mount Aukum tonight or anything. But over the course of the next 4 or 5 days, it'll depend a lot on what kind of access they have. One of the reasons that Caldor was able to run down canyon the way it did at night fairly well into the incident is just that they had really difficult access. The fire was burning in a steep, deep canyon, and they had really difficult access to try to secure that flank during initial attack. And same over here, the fire, as it blew out, there was a lot of difficult ground out here that the fire was then able to kind of spread off of. There weren't great spots for it to be held. So this fire, depending on how well established it becomes at the heel, that'll kind of, what they're able to do on this heel, less active part of the fire today, will have a lot of bearing on what the final westward progression of the fire looks like. But this is a little different than Caldor so far in that it hasn't started off with like a massive run across the canyons, right? Right now it's running with the canyon, so it's a little more like the mosquito fire. All right, and if you want to check out Catherine's YouTube channel, go ahead. But Catherine, I don't really want you taking over my comments here. So there you go. All right. So back to the webcams, see what we can figure out here. Okay, so this dewdrop, that's where we figured out kind of the flanks. On this side here on dewdrop, we've got about 280 is as far as we see smoke out on the north flank. So come back here, make another line here. Right. Yeah, so it looks like from that, my perimeter is kind of probably a little too far north. All right. More cameras, please. All right, so this is Logtown. It's interesting, sometimes the smoke of a fire really shades it out. The fire starts to, watch as the smoke builds in the upper atmosphere here. And that shading, depending on where the sun is, you can start to see shadow out here from the smoke column. Oftentimes a column gets big and it shades out the landscape, and that can really affect the potential rates of fire spread. So let's take a look at that from outer space. Everything's still ponied up for the Gifford. All right, there's our column there. Interesting, the smoke is moving kind of north and south, so it kind of tells you that we don't have a lot of transport wind aloft. It's just kind of, if we had a kind of stronger wind at kind of higher elevations, you'd expect to see that smoke column kind of going out across the landscape. And so that, potentially is going to help the fire not be quite as explosive as if it weren't shading itself off. Good questions here. I'll get to them. Give me a second. I was loading up some heat satellite data. Just kind of look at relative. This is a really coarse scale mapping. Sometimes it's the best we've got. And let's see, it's every 10 minutes. Even though it's not, even though it's like 1 kilometer resolution, sometimes it can help you kind of get an idea of the trend of the fire. Like you see that, maybe 40 minutes ago, the fire, like you see this kind of bright yellowish in there. That tells you that it's really cooking. And then, so we kind of work with what we can get. So Laura Lee says, can you talk about firefighting at night? What's possible, what's not? Tactics and strategy. Yeah, so some of the best firefighting gets done at night, for sure. Let's turn off some of this stuff because I got too much going on here. Confusing. Cal Fire works 24-hour shifts, so they it's good because people see what they're going to be working at night during the day, and then they have familiarity. Forest Service often works 12-hour shifts, and so if you're on night shift, you might not know what the fire did during the day, or you might not even have seen the country in the daylight. So it's one of the real benefits of Cal Fire in the kind of initial phases of a fire, is that they have people that kind of go from day shift into night shift. They know what's going on, they know where they are. And so bulldozers work all night, hand crews work all night, engines work all night. But in this country, a lot of the night work that's going to get done is going to be pushing dozers up these ridges to try to build a big box for this fire. There'll be hand crews working tonight. They'll be trying to secure the flanks of the fire where they can safely anchor into something, and to keep the fire from then coming back down at tomorrow or overnight. Night dropping helicopters are kind of a relatively new thing in California. The Cal Fire's got new Black Hawk, Firehawk helicopters that have night capabilities that they're just starting to really use, and that is an amazing tool, especially in an urban interface, but not as effective on fires that are really well established in rough country. Because as we've said before, they can't really put the fire out with bucket drops or water drops. They can slow it down. In finer fuels and grass and brush, they can put the fire out, sometimes with the night drops. But basically in this country, like when we look at kind of fire history in this country, like large fires usually aren't stopped in the canyons. They're usually stopped on the ridges. If we look at Caldor and where Caldor got stopped, it got stopped along major ridge systems, along roads. Here they picked it up along in the canyon here. But for the most part, these big fires get stopped on ridge systems because that's where you have time to get out ahead of the fire and prepare an indirect line. Or fires like this stop when they get to a different fire or a major road. If we look at the mosquito fire over here, I think the mosquito's got a good potential corollary for this fire. The mosquito started up here, kind of right by the confluence of these forks of the American River. And right off the bat, it blew up into the mountains. Let's see if we might have a progression for that. So we covered mosquito. Was that 2023? Is it 2022? Time flies when you're mapping fires. Mosquito. So many layers. All right, so here's a progression map I made for the mosquito fire. Mosquito started down to here. First day, it kind of got pretty well established. Second day, it got better established in these different canyons. And then it was off to the races. It kind of found what we would call alignment. Man, so many layers. What are we even looking at here? All right, so yeah, third day the fire kind of ran. It had its pick of canyons to run up, and it ran up 3 of them. Eventually it hit the King Fire over here, which it didn't really burn into. And then there were some firing operations later in the fire. They tried to light off this ridge here, but it was too damp to burn by the time they got to it. But what happened that was significant for this fire on Mosquito is that the fire did make some significant down canyon runs in the kind of days, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th days. It burned down canyon, and it did hit a 6-year-old burn, which helped control that part of it. So all these fires basically started in similar spots. King Fire here started down below Camino and made a big run. King made a monster run, one of the kind of biggest runs I've ever seen. And all these fires have then had an element of spread back down the canyon. So what you might expect from Mosquito with this fire is that this fire is in the process of becoming well established. Tomorrow, there's potential for it to make some big runs tomorrow. It gets well established early in the day. It has potential to kind of run some of these canyons with tomorrow's up canyon winds. And then it also has potential to make down canyon runs down towards Coyoteville, Tyler's Corner. Someone says, do I know how it started? I do not. Someone says he lived 30 minutes from the fire. It's been cool at night with the light breeze. Hopefully that helps him overnight. Potential for the overnight for the fire. All right. Yes. Okay, so the fire is spread about 2 miles in 3 hours. Let's see if it looks like it's, you know, changing speed really. 2 drop. It's kind of steadily churning along here. So many cameras. Yeah, it's definitely on the move. You know, I was watching like the last hour. It's churned. It's 176 now from, let's see, 76 from Omo. Let's see where that is. That's not really telling me what I want to know. 76. So as far as overnight potential, it's moved 2 miles in 3 hours. We've got maybe like another hour and a half or two of kind of active burning. And so the fire will probably be fairly well established out in here in another hour and a half. And from there, they're not going to really be able to do a lot in these canyons on the direct attack. They'll likely be pushing dozers on this ridge. If it kind of runs out of gas up here, there's good odds that they'll hold it here on this road here. Not clear that they'll be able to hold it down through here. So it's still my guess, and this is really not based on like any on the ground intel or anything else, that the big push is going to be to get dozer line in this Farnham Ridge Road and maybe fire that. I don't really know what the fire is going to do tonight, but I don't think that the fire is going to be it probably won't double its growth in length before the sun goes down. So the good thing right now about the fire is that it's long and skinny, and it hasn't been pushing too hard up out of these canyons, which might buy them time for kind of indirect line construction on these ridges. And a fire like this won't make its own weather at night, but what it does do is it has a great effect on the very localized weather, right? So if you're standing 50 feet away from this fire, you feel like you're in Hades, right? If you're standing like a quarter mile from this fire, like you don't feel the heat probably. But fires like this, when they become well established in timber, they create the heat that drives them. They create their own heat, and that creates a dynamic in the burning environment of that radiant heat kind of preheating the area around it. And so like when we do prescribed fire, it might be like October, and if you go and stand right next to the fire, it feels like you're in July when you're like 5 feet from the fire. And that stuff right next to the fire burns like it's July. And then you go, 100 feet away, you can't feel any heat from your prescribed burn, and it's just burning like it's October. So the fire has a great effect on its kind of local microclimate, but it's not like going to be pushing up a big like thunderhead and drawing like huge winds in and that kind of stuff at night. But the elements that you need to really develop a big kind of like column-driven fire are kind of fuel that is continuous and topography that the fire wants to run up along. So even though this fire has a big smoke cloud on it, it hasn't really been dominated by what we would call like a pyrocumulus cloud, where you've got like a big ice cap on top of it and it's like a giant thunderhead. It just hasn't really had those dynamics today. Let's see if we can find a camera that's like a little farther out. I mean, there's no shortage of cameras pointing at this fire. Maul's like, man, zoom out. Maybe we have to go farther. Yeah, so you see this big smoke column that's spread out here, but you don't see like a giant like 30,000 foot header with a big mushroom like ice cap on top of it. And so that tells you something, like it's not really generating this like giant column right now that is creating violent in-draft winds at the base. It's putting up a bunch of smoke, and that smoke is kind of capping out at a stable layer in the atmosphere and spreading over long distance. cameras. All right, Fiddletown, 70, 74. Do another shot here. All right, so that Fiddletown camera is kind of showing it's a little farther now to the, a little farther to the east. It's kind of hard to tell behind the mountains where the smoke's boiling up, but it's pretty much where we know it is. It's kind of on that south flank around mountain, keeping moving east. Let's look at the weather forecast here. So many tabs. All right, Sacramento area forecast discussion. Warming trend continues and a heat advisory remains in effect. Elevated fire conditions. All right, I'm gonna check the questions in a minute. I'm just checking out the forecast. Above normal periods of breezy winds, north winds, overnight into Thursday. Okay, so north winds would push the fire a little more towards the communities to the south, like Lockwood. Friday we got a heat advisory. Not much about winds. Dry weather, low daytime humidities, poor overnight recovery. Monsoonal moisture brings chances of evening thunderstorms to the Sierra Crest south of 80 on Friday and the weekends. So that could bring some moisture, but that could also bring outflow winds, which can then be a problem for fire. Strong outflow winds can create problems with fire behavior. Again, here's the fire weather forecast. Tomorrow, sunny, partly cloudy, dry. East winds until late afternoon on the ridge tops. Upslope winds stronger in the afternoon on Friday. So nothing, like no real dramatic weather happening here for us in the foreseeable future, except that we know it's going to be hot and dry through Saturday at least. Poor recoveries, no strong winds. Got some max gusts tomorrow afternoon coming out of the west, which is going to continue to blow the fire in the basic direction that it's going. You know, what we're worried about here would be north winds, because that would tend to blow the fire towards these more developed areas here, Lockwood, Amador Pines. Okay. Lots of questions. Do I think this has potential to be another Caldor? Someone says that's why they got everyone in there right away. Someone else says, do you know if California Insurance is pushing for fire-safe homes and urban wildland interface? Yes, they are. Someone says, if you're in Placerville, Pollock Pines, check your go bags. Okay, so on that tip, I would not say that. I would not say that Pollock Pines, Placerville needs to get their go bags going. We got the Caldor Fire scar here from 2021, 4-year-old burn. Between this fire and that, we don't have history. We don't have a lot of history. Caldor ran hard to the north, but we don't have any big south winds forecast right now. And this fire does make a large effective fuel break against, if we look here at all the salvage logging that's happened around Grizzly Flats in the burn here, like it's substantially just denuded, right? There's like very little continuous vegetation out there, like huge. That's a fuel break, right? Same here. Fire scars tend to provide a lot of kind of regional scale benefit for several years following them. So the Caldor Fire, in effect, is like a fire break for Kybers and Whitehall and Pollock Pines right now against this fire getting there. So, yeah, please don't use my comments to like fire up hysteria. Urban interface living. Thank you. You know, the people that should really be paying attention to this fire right now and getting their stuff together and thinking about being evacuated for an extended amount of time: Lockwood, Amador Pines, Buckhorn, maybe Volcano. But this immediate kind of front here, all these homes along here, like, yes, this fire is knocking on your door. Yes, it's down canyon of you. Yes, there's a lot of unburned fuel between you and the fire. Yes, there's terrible fire hazards in these communities. Be ready to roll in the next couple days. You know, like I said, tonight will really kind of tell a lot of the story of how much progress they think they're going to make on this Farnham Ridge Road indirect. The way that the fire is shaped right now, they may even get like, we don't know that the fire is, like, the mapping shows the fire over this ridge. It's probably fairly certain that the fire is going to burn up the Farnham Ridge Road. But until we have better mapping and see what they get done tonight, you know, we don't really know exactly what's going to happen on the south flank. But yeah, if you live anywhere over here off of Fiddletown or Shake Ridge Road, it's a good time to get your stuff together and be ready to be evacuated for a while. Fair play, Mount Aukum. It's worth watching, but you know, not. You're in better shape than these folks are over here. Wouldn't be surprised if the fire makes some runs downslope overnight, but probably won't be well, I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to say, pay attention to what other people tell you about evacuations. We don't tell people here like whether or not they should evacuate. We just tell them that evacuating earlier is better, and planning on being gone for a long time is good if you're going to evacuate. All right, let's see if we get a new perimeter here. And if you're getting timeout, if you're getting a timeout on the comments, it means you're raising too much ruckus. We try to give people a chance to say what they need to say, but if you're getting a timeout, there's a reason for it. It means you're being moderated because your contribution, we would like to pause your contribution to the conversation. So thanks to my moderator wife for keeping things on track. Okay, I gotta jump into my mapping machine here and see if I can update our perimeter, because Watch Duty, they got a bunch of programmers, and keep their stuff working really well. And I kind of have to like pull a few more extra levers behind the curtain here because I don't have custom software. Let's try that. Hey! Looks like that perimeter didn't change much from what I had before. Same one. Alright, what's my perimeter here? What am I saying? Okay, so my perimeter's 600 acres, Watch Duty's 400. They might have something better than me right now. I hate to say it. What are we doing here? Steve Joe says, you want some custom software? Always, give me a call. Get a hold of me through the app, there we go. There we go. So let's see. I think I can make that happen over here too. Give me a second here. The problem, Steve, is that Google Earth doesn't play well with data feeds always. So because I'm using it as my main platform, it's kind of a pain. But I love Google Earth. It's worth the pain, but it's hard to develop stuff that works seamlessly in it. Let's try this again. Boo. Here. So much land. Alright. Here's what Watch Duty has. It's kind of showing the same thing we have of the fire kind of moving around south end around mountain. And kind of holding here on this first ridge, but there's spots out ahead of it here. The best case scenario would be that they would be able to hold it kind of on this slope, but once it slops over the ridge, you know, if they got crews in there tonight and they can kind of, it lays down, they might be able to go direct around these flanks. But it's going to be tough in places where they got steep slopes. So it's still basically about what we had wagged here. How far is the Fed DPA? Starts on Omo Ranch. So let's pull up our someone's asking about when it gets on federal land versus state responsibility area. So we've got our state responsibility area here. So it's got quite a ways to go, but this white area is the area that basically state taxpayers pay CAL FIRE to protect these areas that are kind of in white. So it's got quite a ways to go before it gets on to this federally protected land, but not super far actually. Guessing 3 or 4 miles. But then if it keeps going up towards 88, it'll be on the SRA. One of the reasons that matters is because the person who's got land management responsibility is the person who sends the incident command team. So right now this is a CAL FIRE incident, meaning that if we put a team on it, it'll be a CAL FIRE team. So KCRA has a chopper up. Copter 3. What are they doing? It's like a blurry webcam that flies. If you're wondering, this is non-alcoholic beer. I'm not drinking and driving in the lookout. Urban Interface Living says that we might want to work out something that combines topo maps with VR so people can see roads and vegetation in first person to give evac info to people that can determine the best ways out. I don't know about that, man. Matt Dyke says it heard it costs $100,000 per retardant drop. It does if you drop it out of the DC-10, like those big VLATs. Very large air tankers. They drop some like what 8 to 12,000 gallons per drop, and those cost 80,000 and up to drop. So yeah, the big air tankers are crazy expensive to operate. I mean, everything about firefighting is really expensive. Like the firefighters get paid a lot on the state side. The strike teams that come from like LA, like when you order a bunch of urban interface strike teams, like urban departments like LA City show up with their Type 1 engines. Like those, the last I heard, and this was years ago, those were like $36,000 a day for 5 engines. And I think it's probably a lot more than that now, because not only do you have to pay the firefighters that are there, but you have to pay the overtime for the firefighters in LA that come on duty to cover the people that are out of town. So yeah, when you see those big, Huntington Beach, LA City, whatever, big urban fire engines rolling up to a fire like the Park Fire, and you got some dudes out there like mopping up with a Type 1 engine, like that's so expensive, really, really expensive. And then those guys work 24 hours on, 24 hours off. All right, we don't talk about cause. We don't talk about fire causes on here just because it's not really our lane. We don't want to speculate. And it gets so fraught, it gets so political. People are like, oh, homeless person started this, or legal aliens or whatever. Like, fires start, they get investigated, they usually figure out what's going on, but we don't really get into that whole thing. I mean, it doesn't matter how it started, but we're more interested in what's going to happen now. And just in general, kind of a comment on our comment section and on our channel, and our intent is information, good information, knowledge, to be knowledgeable and to like share good information. And so any comments that aren't in that vein aren't helpful, right? We don't speculate, we don't blame as much as possible. We try to keep this kind of legit, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I feel like that's why people like us, right? We're trying to be legit. We're not going to get all crazy politics about it. And we're trying hard not to speculate, right? Like the whole internet is so full of like crazy batshit, like conspiracy space laser stuff that like, that's one of the reasons we exist, is to kind of provide an alternative to the people who are just like making up crazy stuff, or even like bots that are intentionally screwing with us to like divide our country. Like I'm convinced when I look at a lot of our comments that like, and if I like go on Facebook and track down like people who are like making crazy comments on my site, like oftentimes I'm like, this is a robot. I'm pretty sure it's a robot. Like looking at their profiles and stuff, like a lot of the craziest stuff that we get comes from like, I'm pretty sure comes from like deliberate misinformation kind of propaganda stuff. And when we did the LA fires, it got so crazy with our comments, we just had to turn them off, and we don't want to have to do that. So we appreciate the like people police it. Smoke's getting lighter. That's a good sign. When smoke gets lighter, it usually tells you either that the fire is like getting the lighter fuels, or it's not like cranking as hard in the continuous big heavy fuels. Let's see if we can get a better view of like the shadow. You can see like this huge shadow out here from the smoke cloud. Let's just see if we can see that at all on our weather stuff. You can definitely see the shadow out there on this animation. You see that the fire, like when you see the shadow on top of the smoke cloud, you can tell that it's kind of like pushing up a tall column, and then you see how it kind of just like lost that momentum. But especially like on the Gifford fire, the shading is a really significant factor in the fire behavior. Sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. We're looking here at this kind of column development, and you can see like at first you can kind of see a little nipple kind of pop up on top, like a little smoke shadow, but then it kind of flattens out, and that's what we're seeing in these webcams, farther out ones. It's a huge column. Still looks plenty churny on the. It's kind of interesting here. Look at that. How long? Like that smoke column, that cap is like 80 miles long. Thanks for the contribution, Travis MJ. Appreciate it. Appreciate people helping give us money. The best way to give us money, if you want to, is go on the Lookout and do it through PayPal, because YouTube takes 30% of every dollar that they give us. And we appreciate YouTube, but we don't really want to make them richer. So yeah, check out our PayPal. You can become a monthly subscriber, yearly subscriber, one-time subscriber. You can buy some merch. We've got some new hats coming. We got new t-shirts coming. My wife's making really bitchin' Lookout coffee mugs. So if you're prone to hanging out watching the Lookout, you could actually be watching the Lookout while you drink your Lookout coffee. She's awesome. She makes really beautiful stuff. That's like, we're kind of scrapping it. I'm doing the Lookout full time, and like all these little kind of variety of little streams of revenue are somehow keeping the lights on here, and I'm able to tell these stories. So Yeah, we appreciate anyone who wants to be part of that. But yeah, this is pretty wild looking at the kind of the big picture of the smoke and everything. So this is looking from, looks like the smoke might not be shading the actual fire, but it sure is shading the land out ahead of it. I mean, it's shading this whole spot where this camera is. It's wild. So I guess, the thing about live streaming this now is you get to just see me compulsively reloading the cameras, which is what I do when I'm not on the live stream. See if my map's working yet here. Right, a little more data sculpting here in the background. Looks like we actually do have now what Watch Steve was showing with the virus. Alright, yeah, I'll pull up the aircraft here in a minute. I'm just changing my fire polygon here. Alright, so yeah, so this is 6 p.m. perimeter is showing up here now in the dark red. So my guess was a little farther east than it actually is. So it shows a spot that's kind of made a slope-driven run up into this plantation here. And it shows a bunch of spotting along this ridge here, this first ridge. And so we'd expect the fire to kind of be backing down slope here. I'm surprised that it hasn't run more up this mountain. I'm not sure, like maybe the retardant's really helping on this flank here, on the north flank. Like the smoke's kind of headed out this way, so they've been able to kind of hem in that north flank. I expected the north flank to kind of run that slope stronger. Okay, someone wants to see aircraft activity. We can do that. Looking at the Aukum camera, got a spot to the south. All right. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, share the stream. Okay, so someone says, looking at the Aukum, let's look at the Aukum camera and see what we're talking about here. It's hard to keep track of all these cameras. This is Dewdrop. So this is our east view. This is Log Town, Cedar Mill. Mount Aukum. Where's Mount Aukum anyway, people? Here we go, Aukum camera. Alright, someone's pointing out that there's a spot fire out here to the south. I don't know if that's a spot or not. Let's see. Looks like it. So where's that? Aukum 121. Aukum 122. Yeah, so one of the best ways if you want to watch the aircraft activity is to check out, do it on watch duty. And then I also like flight radar. Flight radar 24. So there's your air attack plane. So these tankers tend to work in tandem. 82 and 83 are both out of, I don't know where they're out of this, out of Columbia maybe. But usually consecutive numbers work out of the same base. So Chico's got like, you know, I don't know, like 90 and 91 or something like that. I can't keep them all straight. Yeah, I know someone said I gotta turn on squawk. I wrote it down. 1255. I don't know how to do that, but see just the aircraft that are on the plane on the fire. Usually, you know, the big tankers are coming because you see a lead plane show up, and the lead plane then actually like flies the line they want the tankers to drop on. Stop listening to the radio here. It's kind of a lot to try to talk and listen to the radio too. What was I going to look at? I was going to look at Mount Aukum and the this is supposed spot. There we go. So many cameras. So many steps. A lot of clicks. I hate to think how many times I've clicked in my life. But it's many, many clicks. Right, there's Aukum. Okay, so we think we might see a spot on here. Let's see if we can shoot a line at it. Put it out with a Jewish space laser. Okay, Aukum. That's what they need, is they need to put space lasers on the webcams. So then you can light your backfires without having to leave your chair. Okay, what was it? Mount Aukum 122. That was a joke. I joke a lot, people. I know it's no laughing matter, but what happened? Okay. I don't see my line. All right. Okay, so viewer saw a smoke to the south and thought it might be a spot fire, and it could be the fire here making a run up out of Farnham Creek. This is the shot of that. If you go from Mount Aukum, which is where now? Yeah, we're looking. Oh man, broke the matrix. Yeah, someone spotted the smoke out here. Thought it might be a spot. That might be the fire kind of cooking up out of there. So this is Round Mountain still. We're kind of looking at that northwest flank. So we were just talking about how they've done a pretty good job of holding this kind of north side of the fire. So this gives you a decent view of that flank of the fire. Let's look at the last hour. So we're definitely starting to see a little bit more, it looks like, of a bit of a little northerly push, right? The smoke, when it first started, what time is it? We're 7 o'clock. So if we look at, 4 o'clock today, a lot of the smoke seemed to be going a little more to the left here. Am I wrong? Okay, start to see a little more of a like northerly push here. See, the column's starting to kind of bend. You do see that this area out here isn't shaded by the column, but the area kind of out ahead of the fire is a little more shaded, which is kind of where it matters, right? The head of the fire being shaded is significant. So one thing that happens often with a wind change, or especially when we get a frontal passage, is fires tend to look like a feather when they burn for one day. The wind blows consistently, the fire kind of, you picture the spine of the feather being the direction of the wind. But a problem we can have is a fire opens up a lot of perimeter. And then if you get a big wind shift, if suddenly we had a big north wind that blew, suddenly this whole south end of the fire could become the head. So let's just turn off some of our little squirrely shot lines here and say that, let's pull up our magic soccer board here. Yeah, so the fire's been going like this, but oftentimes we get like a frontal passage. I'm not going to get into the whole kind of like weather lecture right now, but oftentimes you get big wind shifts, like pattern shifts, when you have a frontal passage. So say you've got a prevailing wind like this, and then after a day of burning you start getting a north wind. What happens is this whole flank here, the flanks of the fire move slower than the head. They don't spread as fast, because your energy is going this way. But if you get a big wind shift, suddenly this whole flank can become the head, and that's when bad things happen. That happened on the Moonlight Fire. It's kind of a textbook kind of fire behavior problem, is like when you have a frontal passage. Let's just look at real quick, let's look at a weather map and talk about this a little bit. All right, so we got a good example of this kind of idea going on here, right? We've got a big tropical storm out here, and a big low pressure system. Yeah, is this, let's check out the Amador County Sheriff's. Fires cross the Amador County line, fire is really big. Is that legit? I'm not sure that the Sheriff's Department's going to reach out to me as the hi in all lowercase. Hello, Amador County Sheriff's. You spelled sheriff's wrong. Okay, well, don't listen to the sheriff, because it's not the real sheriff. Back to the weather lecture. All right, so I got there's a little meteorology, right? You got a hurricane out here. It's a low pressure system, and the winds are moving like counterclockwise around it, right? So winds get sucked in like this. And out here you got another low pressure system, and so the winds kind of move this way around it. So a classic thing that happens is like you get a low, and the winds go like that around it, right? And then that low moves over here, and so now, say your wind was going this way on your fire, and now the low's out here. Sorry, I'm smoking crack around here. Undo that. What I'm trying to say is that when you have a frontal passage, you can have strong winds coming like from this direction, and then when the front moves farther, then suddenly the winds start coming this way after the front has passed, because now the low's out here. And so when that happens, say you have a fire that starts with the wind blowing like this and it gets long, like the Moonlight Fire is a good example, but then like the next day the wind's coming from here, all of this flank that got opened up on that original kind of run of the fire now becomes a head. And so it's something to watch out for. And when we look at fires like we've got right now and what their potential is, you got to kind of look out and see, like, is there a forecast for like a cold front to pass? And there isn't right now, which is good, because in the big picture where we're at in the season, the winds from here on out, the winds start to get more strong and become a bigger destructive factor in large fires. So the Camp Fire happened in the fall, the Tubbs Fire happened in the fall, the Bear Fire happened, in the second week of September. Come the last week of August, there's all the cards are on the table for weather. For most of the summer, we just don't see big north or east wind events in California for the most part all summer. And then come the end of August, the weather pattern, the days get shorter, the weather patterns kind of break down, and you got more potential for north winds, for big strong east winds. And so like the arrival of a big continental scale east wind event right now would be bad with a fire like this, because it would blow the fire back down towards Mount Aukum. The good thing about all that is that we're really good at forecasting big scale things like that. You'll see a red flag warning in October because we know we're going to have a week of east winds. So right now that's not on our radar because it's not in the forecast, and those things usually don't sneak up on us. So that definitely makes the situation for these folks on this end of the fire less dire than if we're in the first week of September or something. Not to say that this fire isn't going to burn for a while and that you might have to worry about that a week from now, but like in the next couple days, like things off to the west of this fire are probably a lot more chill than things out ahead of it. All right. Okay, someone's watching the airdrops on flight radar and said they're not dropping on Round Mountain. Tanker 181 inbound. Okay, so I'm going to put back up something here, which is our kind of distance to fire. And just talk about, so basically this is a 2-mile diameter on this inner circle. The fire's spread about 2 miles since in the last 4 hours, which gives you a decent idea, like, okay, it's probably not going to spread another 2 miles in the next 4 hours because the sun's going down. But just to give you an idea, Lockwood is 4 miles from the center of the fire. Amador Pines is 7 miles. Fairplay is 4 miles. Omo Ranch, 4.5. And I don't have a lot else to share with you guys right now. It's nice hanging out. Thanks for all your comments. We will have a new live stream in the morning. If this fire is like massively active tonight, if something extraordinary happens, we'll get back on. But in the meantime, watch duty is good for, you know, when there's new flights. You can check that out, see what's happening. We'll get back on in the morning. We'll have probably, hopefully they'll fly IR on it overnight. We'll have something to report on it. And we'll try to get a hold of friends who are out working on the fire and get the skinny, listen to the radio a bit. But for now, we're going to close out here. We're going to pay some respect to our sponsors because they really make it happen.
Don't want nothing. Ain't enough, so that's what I'm gonna get. The feel I need something. Taking my time and never forget about everything. Too much things running around in my brain, so come on, sweetness. Won't you have to ease the pain? Oh, love me, baby. Excuse me, mama. Then catch the I know I didn't dream it. I guess I do want something, but I can't seem to find it yet. Sometimes I feel like I'm nothing. You say I'm nothing you could ever forget. Well, that's just one thing. You said the kids were hanging on. Sometimes I could just scream.